It's late at night, a narrow single bed, someone is sleeping restlessly, every now and then pulling the blanket over themselves, which is obviously too small and short. The hero, a young brunette with red horns, tosses and turns and mutters and complains in his sleep about how cramped and uncomfortable it is to sleep under such a narrow blanket. The thing is that he is too tall, and his long legs, which are barely half a meter, do not fit entirely under the blanket. The hero tosses and turns, rolls over and through his sleep, without opening his eyes, reflects on how and what he had to go through. His thoughts wander and wander around memories of the past, when suddenly, through his sleep, he hears a voice, and this voice clearly intends to disturb his sleep. As soon as the hero's thoughts return to how he found himself in this world of riders, a loud voice, turning into a scream, asks whether the hero has seen the time and why he is still not in bed. Does he really need a special invitation from a certain aunt? It turns out that standing on the threshold is Yuli, known as a second-rank martial artist and, incidentally, the best student in her high school. And here is a real horse, the hero thinks, looking at Yuli, a very attractive woman, by the way. Obviously, Yuli's sweet and innocent appearance is deceiving. She loses her patience and almost explodes trying to get through to Chinu. The girl is already almost furious. In a fit of rage she pounds on the wall and asks if Chinu really considers himself a child of the devil, since he allows himself to behave like this, and she is also trying to find out why those flowers are so red. Die, Yuli shouts angrily and frantically, and this loud and dramatic scene unfolds in the immediate vicinity of the kitchen, where an attractive slightly older girl, Yuli, is busy chopping vegetables. The person in the kitchen, and this, by the way, turns out to be Yuna, the former wild horse of the emperor and a fourth-rank fighter of the Order of the Centurion, is clearly in a good mood. She is enjoying a great day and cannot help but smile on her face. Yuna tries to reason with and calm down Yuli verbally, but perhaps a freshly baked hot cake and buns will be more effective. The wise elder Yuna asks Yuli to be more tolerant of Chinu, because he is her brother, but Yuli does not want to hear anything about such a brother and rejects the idea of any relationship between them. He is our enemy, Yuli passionately shouts, but Chinu doesn't seem to hear her, sits at the other end of the table and silently eats lunch. Yuna still tries in vain to calm the hot-tempered Yuli, but she refuses to remain silent. In the end Yuna sends Yuli to extra classes in the afternoon. Chinu plunges into dark memories. Internally he agrees with Yuli's words, and adds to himself, I am not only their enemy, but also the murderer of Yuna's husband. Perhaps a dinner with loved ones is not the best time and place for sad and dramatic memories, but the memory takes the hero back 11 years ago, to the time when the Devil's Gates opened. Crowds of demons poured out of the Devil's Gate. There were some incredible numbers of them, and the Empire had to unite to drive them out. The unification bore fruit, the devil had to retreat, the enemy was defeated, but victory was not easy. The devil, despite the retreat and defeat, managed to leave his descendants among the inhabitants of the Empire. All these thoughts and memories were spinning in the head of 16-year-old Chinu, a descendant of that very devil, who, however, did not look devilish at all, only the red horns among his dark hair betrayed his demonic origin. Having finished his lunch, Chinu rose from the table, when suddenly something whistled loudly above his ear and hit his head with the disgusting sound of breaking glass. It was a glass, accurately thrown by Yuli at Chinu's head. She could not calm down and continued to burst out with curses not only towards the guy, but also towards the Empire, which, in her opinion, should not have accepted such devilish offspring with open arms. There was so much anger and rage in this little girl. The desire to die was perhaps the most affectionate parting word to Chinu, but he was patiently silent and did not stoop to mutual threats and insults. Yuna clearly felt awkward and embarrassed for Lee, stroked her hair and tried to calm her down, but it was all in vain. It was as if a demon had possessed the girl. Finding himself alone, Chinu remembered all those terrible and unfair words spoken by Yuli, and although he internally agreed that she had the right to be angry, after all, this is revenge for the murder of his father, but there are some things to come to terms with he could not. Leaning back on his pillow, Chinu reflected that people never dared to personally and directly deal with him, no matter how much hatred and rage they felt. Tormented by obsessive thoughts, he covered his face with his palms and wondered what would happen next, what awaited him this time. Chinu wondered if the system should awaken this time, or if things would be different now. The guy clearly could not find a place for himself from anxiety, thoughts tormented him in circles again, and questions remained unanswered. When suddenly he was thrown up on the bed, he began to look around in bewilderment and suddenly saw a bright inscription in front of his eyes, saying that the system was activated. This was followed by a message that the host could improve his skills using the energy of his opponent, but at the moment there were no opponents. Great, Chinu admired, is this really my ability, he wondered. Then Chinu was struck by an even more logical question, namely, why was he doing housework if his purpose was much more grandiose? It turns out that in a past life, Chinu was beaten, hospitalized, and then, after a clash with another patient, died from hypoxia. Having learned such stunning news, Chinu leaves the room and looks around. It seems that there is almost no one at home, except for himself and Aunt Yuna. This is luck, this is lucky, Chinu rejoices, because if Yuli were here, she would not miss the opportunity to beat him, and Aunt Yuna will limit herself to a reprimand, as always. Chinu noticed his auntie in the kitchen. She stood with her back turned to him, and seemed not to notice at all how he was creeping up behind her with the obvious intention of scaring her, and at the same time testing the system. There are only 3 steps left to the auntie. I'm about to scare her so much that she will jump, Chinu thinks, when suddenly Yuna turns around sharply with a knife in her hands. The knife not only looks very sharp, it also ends up dangerously close to Chinu's neck, and he recoils in fear, panic frozen in his eyes. It seems that Aunt Yuna is surprised to see Chinu. What are you doing here? She asks with a smile, while she is in no hurry to remove the knife from the guy's neck. Ah, you probably wanted to help, Yuna suggests, but your help is not needed, go and get some rest, she advises Chinu. And at this very time, the system signals red right before Chinu's eyes. The system warns of growing extreme hatred towards the host. The numbers jump from 103 and up to 112, the hatred goes off scale. Damn it, this is what the system is, Chinu guesses, and he doesn't seem to like this guess at all. And he likes the next guess even less. If the system showed such overwhelming numbers of hatred, it means Aunt Yuna hates him so much. Even if this is the case, and Aunt Yuna feels such strong hatred for Chinu, outwardly she does not show it at all, she smiles as if nothing had happened. Suddenly, Chinu bends down, lowers his hands to his knees and tries to calm down and regain his breathing. He is torn apart by conflicting feelings, his facial expression cannot hide these emotions inside, and his eyes give him away. Not caring what Aunt Yuna would think, Chinu turns around abruptly and runs to his room. Auntie follows him with an indifferent gaze, her true thoughts cannot be read from her face. Having slammed the door and finding himself in the twilight of his room, Chinu returns to thoughts about his auntie. He scolds her with the last words and is amazed that he really caused such a high level of energy in her. Who is she? A bitch, a two-faced person, a crazy woman, a wolf in sheep's clothing. Going through Chinu's options in his head, and before his eyes is the image of Yuna with a knife in her hands and an innocent smile on her face. But suddenly the flow of thoughts about the aunt is interrupted by a blue tablet in front of his eyes. It shows how much power of different types Chinu was able to accumulate, so the question of the true essence of the aunt is forgotten for the time being. Chinu cannot contain his joy. He received a lot of power points, because everything that does not kill us makes us stronger. He remembers the wisdom of Lu Sun. However, these numbers are not enough for him, and Chinu decides that he must increase his physical strength. The system is loading and loading. Chinu is already losing patience, when suddenly he sees a warning that energy points are not enough to increase physical strength. That's it, Chinu miscalculated. It turns out that moving from level 22 to level 23 of physical strength costs a whole 1,000 points, because with each level the cost of improvement increases. Where can I get so much energy? Chinu thinks, when suddenly an idea comes to mind. Perhaps I should catch my aunt's eye more often. But this idea can be called good only if the goal is to die at the hands of the aunt, Chinu concludes. Almost in despair, Chinu thinks that he may have to retreat from his plans, since nothing else comes to mind. These thoughts and torments of the guy were completely unknown to Yuli, who had been sitting calmly in her room all this time, and at the moment was changing clothes and was clearly not ready for uninvited guests. It seems that Chinu entered Yuli's room without knocking, or she was too busy changing clothes. One way or another, the guy clearly entered at the wrong moment. It seems that Yuli was caught by surprise. She is embarrassed and at the same time in anger trying to cover herself with clothes, while she herself is wearing only underwear. But Chinu doesn't seem embarrassed or guilty, and he doesn't look away either. He only notices that Yuli has nothing to hide from him. Yuli tries to object, but Chinu interrupts her by saying that he has everything that she has. Chinu proudly shows off his sculpted and toned biceps and playfully asks if his pecs are bigger than hers. The guy continues to grin and doesn't pay any attention to the warning, to the threat with which Yuli pronounces his name in his voice, and very, very in vain. Die, little Yuli screams, and furiously throws her fists at Chinu. The first blow lands on the guy right in the stomach. Who would have thought that this fragile-looking baby with a fluffy tail had so much strength, anger, rage? They were clearly enough to teach Chinu a lesson. Anger is used, consumption consumes units of energy. This is exactly the inscription Chinu sees before his eyes. Something is a little weak, you haven't eaten enough porridge, so you continue to mock the Chinu girl as if nothing had happened, teasing her and inciting her, and thinking to yourself about how successfully he caught her exactly at the moment when she was changing clothes. Yuli cannot tolerate such open ridicule. She threatens to end this very second with the arrogant and smug guy. She is about to give him something that will make him regret that he was born. Anger is used, a warning flashes in front of Chinu's eyes again and again, while Yuli kicks him in a fit of anger. Chinu's nose is already bleeding, while Yuli continues to rage, fight and get angry. Exhausted, Chinu lies on the floor. He is amazed by such power, and the system gives him another notification. Anger has accumulated, 500 units of energy have been consumed. He hears someone calling his name from behind the door, but he does not have the strength to get up. It turns out that it is Yuna. She is surprised to see Chinu in her daughter's room at such a late time. Chinu sees the hatred she feels for him. The energy numbers jump up, even though Yuna is able to masterfully hide her feelings. Wow, it's incredible. From the number 114 energy points jumped right up to 444. This is the extreme degree of hatred. Without giving away anything, Chinu agrees with his aunt that it's really late and it's time to go to bed. In a calm voice, he wishes his aunt good night, but he thinks to himself, it's time to get out of here as quickly as possible. Confused, Yuli asks her mother if Chinu really decided to joke like that, but she doesn't find what to answer. Apparently, Chinu had no intention of sleeping. Instead, he armed himself with a knife and was clearly planning something. Turning the knife with the blade towards himself, he pokes it into his stomach, but does not bend over in pain, but on the contrary, grins and thinks, it must be as simple as shelling pears. His enthusiasm is clearly fueled by the system's numbers. They report that physical strength is 24, mental 15, and the war level has reached 11. Satisfied, Chinu finally falls asleep. The next morning, Chinu heads to school. He walks behind Yuli, who walks ahead cheerfully with a backpack on her back. Suddenly, Chinu feels something. His instincts have become sharper, but he cannot understand what it is and only runs forward, guided by his instinct. He is surrounded by a crowd of people. Everyone is in a hurry somewhere. Chinu freezes in place and looks around. Blue numbers of the system flash before his eyes. Suddenly he realizes that he is at the epicenter of energy. Here it is, the source of strength from all these people around. Look here, Chinu addresses the crowd near him, and thinks to himself that he can only rely on the education of his faithful comrades. They will not suppress their feelings. Is this a school? This is a real energy field, Chinu exclaims, and around him there are no longer just lonely numbers of the system. He finds himself in the center of a whole funnel of energy. All these numbers and funnels, of course, are not visible to Yuli, who watches Chinu with curiosity and wonders where such a love for school came from in him. Walking down the school corridor and suspecting nothing, Chinu hears someone calling his name. It seems that someone is very surprised that Chinu finally decided to come to school, because before he simply hated it. Chinu turns around and sees Zhao Yuran, his homeroom teacher, who wants to know how her student is feeling. She heard that he was a little sick. Before he can open his mouth and reassure the class teacher, Chinu sees a system warning about hostility and, as a consequence, an increase in energy by 55 points. Is Zhao Yuran really pretending and just imitating a kind attitude? Chinu thinks, until he notices a group of other students. It's all about male jealousy, he concludes. In just a split second, a plan matured in the guy's head, and, apparently, those students would not like this plan at all. The guy falls sharply forward, right on top of his class teacher. His face hits her chest exactly. The teacher clearly did not expect this development of events. Apparently, the student is still a little unwell, and she offers to take him to the infirmary. Chinu mutters something inaudibly in the arms of the teacher. He clearly doesn't want to go to the infirmary, but his calculation worked correctly and as planned. Another student, Chinu's rival for Zhao's attention, turns purple with rage, watching this scene. The fact is that Chinu is trying to justify his reluctance to go to the infirmary by saying that I am not sick, I am just wasting away from love, and such a confession extremely surprises the teacher. The system does not make you wait long and issues a warning about hostility. The energy points increase by 55, which means that Chinu's insidious plan worked perfectly. The hapless rivals in the fight for Zhao Yuran's attention are confused and frustrated and seem to be up to something. Evening comes, which means that classes are over. For most students this is their favorite time of freedom. But Chinu is not in a hurry to go home after school. He sat down on a bench near the school and decides to wait for the scoundrel Yuli. She is about to pass by, and at this time the guy comes to the conclusion that today at school was not so bad. That's how much energy we managed to collect. The unsuspecting Chinu hears the voices of excited teenagers behind him. One of the instigators suggests that they all attack Chinu together and grab him. Yes, the guy clearly did not expect this, but, on the other hand, retribution for the scene with Zhao Yuran in the corridor would not have been long in coming. Suddenly, Chinu's vision went dark, as if someone had turned off the light. It turned out that the guys had brought a bag with them and threw it over Chinu's head, but they didn't even suspect that they themselves would become victims to practice Chinu's new tricks. Yes, without a doubt, the punching bags arrived on time and literally floated into your hands. Well, now get them. Chinu received incomparable pleasure from the fight. It had been a long time since he had used his fists with such frenzy and fury. The would-be fighters scattered to the sides just like sacks. Chinu's fists and knees struck faster than they even had time to realize what was happening. The sounds of a fight, although it would be more correct to say a one-sided beating, reached Yuli, who was just passing by the school gates. She immediately guessed that this was the work of her brother's hands and fists. Yes, exactly, it was Chinu himself. Yuli immediately recognized the guy, even with a bag on his head, which, by the way, did not prevent him from deftly beating his opponents. Yuli even trembled with resentment, and rushed like a bullet into the very epicenter of the fight, shouting that only she was allowed to beat Chinu. Of course, with a bag on his head, Chinu couldn't see who burst into the fight like a hurricane, but he recognized Yuli's voice and was surprised if the nasty girl really decided to help him. It didn't look like her at all. Fragile Yuli slightly overestimated her strength, and after another well-aimed blow, although you couldn't tell from whom, she fell and plopped onto the asphalt, hitting herself painfully. At this time, Chinu continued his bloody reprisal. However, the offenders did not look menacing at all, but rather humiliated and pitiful. They lay on the ground and groaned in pain. Then the guy finally noticed Yuli, who at that moment was clumsily trying to get to her feet, and wondered if she was really ready to beat him herself, but at the same time she didn't allow others to do this. Even if Aunt Yuna didn't find out about anything, she would simply kill me. Just this one thought tormented Chinu at that moment. But this thought was instantly replaced by concern for Yuli. As soon as Chinu looked at the swollen and beaten girl, she really didn't look her best. She had abrasions on her face, and her clothes were torn. After carefully examining Yuli and making sure that her life was not in danger, Chinu breathed out a sigh of relief. Thank God, nothing happened. He peered into the girl's face with anxiety. He experienced mixed feelings, because despite her rude words, she not only tried to save and protect him, but also felt much less hatred towards him than most of his classmates. Chinu could not come to a definite conclusion. He replayed in his head again and again all those unfair words that he had heard so many times from Yuli, and could not believe that she had so bravely rushed into the fight for him. In any case, it was time to return home, and Chinu put the exhausted Yuli on his shoulders. All the way home, while he was carrying her, he kept thinking about what a strange and unpredictable person she was. It was in vain that Chinu worried about what his aunt would say when she saw the state in which her daughter returned home. She, without batting an eyelid, filled her mother's brains with a story about how she missed a couple of shots in training, so Chinu was safe and saved once again. The next few days turned out to be calm and measured for Chinu. He still continued to earn extra energy points at school, inflaming and inciting hatred among his classmates. For example, he teased the girls. He was so amused by how funny they reacted to his jokes, how angry they were. The hostility grew, and with it the energy points. But it wasn't just the girls who got it. For example, the director and his shining bald head turned purple with anger when Chinu shamelessly announced in front of everyone that he had brought the director his package, an ointment for hair loss. Fights with classmates replaced his evening jogging. They kept the guy in good shape just as well as sports, and his energy grew every minute. A whole week passed like this, and when Chinu came to school one morning, as usual, it was closed. The screams of the students could not be heard from the windows, and he was surprised that classes had really been cancelled for today. Suddenly, Chinu heard sounds that seemed to be very close. He could even distinguish familiar voices, and he remembered that today was the Northern District High School League competition. Damn it, what did they forget there? Chinu thought, and rushed there, into the hall where the competition was taking place. Apparently, a lot of people gathered for the competition, which means that Chinu had something to profit from there. This promised him another source of energy points. Strange, Chinu thought when he heard the crowd chanting Yuli's name, the students cheering her on and urging her to deal properly with her opponent, Bai Xiaoyi. He couldn't understand why all these people were supporting Yuli, when suddenly he saw her herself. She was right in the center of the hall and was completely captured in the battle with the enemy. The crowd was clearly anticipating the exciting spectacle that was about to unfold before their eyes. Meanwhile, Chinu wondered what kind of unfortunate person had fallen into the hands of Yuli. Oh no, Chinu thought as soon as he saw what was really happening. Apparently, the opponent was stronger and right now Yuli was losing. With another powerful and crushing blow from her opponent, Yuli was thrown into the opposite corner of the hall, and Chinu hurried towards her. He barely had time to grab the girl in his arms. She was so exhausted from the battle and seemed to be seriously injured. Her eyes were closed, and she only sighed quietly in pain. Damn it, Chinu thought when he was finally able to see Yuli's opponent, Bai Xiaoyi, standing in the ring with a proud and smug look, clutching a weapon in his hand. Bai Xiaoyi clearly felt like a winner. He already knew that the title of representative of the third class of the high school now belonged to him, and mocked Yuli. It could not be that the daughter of a knight of the Centurion Order turned out to be so weak. Chinu was very alarmed by Yuli's condition. He could not believe that Yuli, who was so strong and skilled in training, could receive such a serious injury from her opponent. The next morning came. The weather was surprisingly sunny, warm and pleasant, and the inhabitants of the Yu family's house were about to go about their business. Chinu was just about to leave when he suddenly froze in surprise when he saw the outfit Yuli was wearing to go to school. She was wearing a night costume. Is today a special day, or did you just decide to make a splash at school by wearing a night costume? He asked Yuli. Don't poke your nose into my affairs, Yuli replied sharply, and it seems that you are the only one in the entire school who doesn't know anything, she added, and after today I will be able to join the knights. Chinu listened to this and still nothing did not understand. Chinu thought about it, because Auntie strictly set the age limit for Yuli. Why suddenly she changed her mind and agreed. Meanwhile, the finals for selecting a class representative were taking place at the school, and Zhao Yuran was giving her rivals final instructions. Friendship should remain in first place, and competition in second. The tournament among high school students in the Northern District was declared open, and the two rivals stood opposite each other. Teacher Zhao Yuran introduced the competitors. One of them was Yuli, the heiress of the chief knight, a second-year high school student. The second was Bai Xiaoyi, the heir of the White Dog Company and a second-year high school student, and the battle began. Yuli decided to get ahead of her opponent and strike first, shouting beware. She swung her sword at the enemy. Bai Xiaoyi apparently did not expect this and was caught by surprise, but he managed to block and parry the blow. Damn, Bai Xiaoyi cursed when the second sword strike from Yuli did not take long. It seemed that she was in an extremely fighting spirit today. Bai Xiaoyi gathered his strength and exclaimed, magic armor. Apparently he had certain hopes for his armor, while he held his weapon firmly and confidently in his hand. Yuli was already striking the third blow with her sword. It seemed that she was enjoying the pleasure and excitement of battle. she clearly felt strength and power in herself. Finally, Bai Xiaoyi gathered his strength and decided that this was the perfect moment to counterattack, his eyes glowing militantly. "Did you really hope to surpass the future knight in speed?" With these words, Yuli overtook her opponent and once again struck with her sword. "You shouldn't hope, no one has ever run away from me," Yuli shouted. She was completely absorbed in the spirit of battle. "You are cheating, but you can't get away from me," Yuli shouted to her opponent. He tried to dodge, but the blow from Yuli's mounted knight hit the target. Yuli gathered her strength for her signature blow, and, jumping high, she forcefully unleashed a powerful blow on Bai Xiaoyi. The opponent was defeated and literally nailed to the floor. He didn't even try to get up, and not a trace remained of his playful mood. Lying on the floor, Bai Xiaoyi tried to clear his throat after the battle. It seemed that he wanted to say something, but even that he did not have the strength to do. Yuli came up and stood next to her, taking a proud and triumphant pose as a winner. She was sure that victory and the title were hers. Zhao Yuran approached the rivals and was ready to officially announce the winner. The teacher began her speech. "The winner is declared," Zhao Yuran started. Yuli stood majestically next to her. She felt on a wave of triumph, and could not see how Bai Xiaoyi was watching her. Bai Xiaoyi not only watched, all this time he was accumulating strength for the decisive blow, and in just a split second he stood up, sharply rushed forward and dealt a crushing blow to Yuli's back. Yuli could not expect this. She fell face down, the sword fell from her hands, and Bai Xiaoyi triumphantly declared himself the winner. Night, darkness reigns in the house. Only the cat, curled up on the steps of the stairs, hears snippets of conversation and the voices of two women. This is Yuna and teacher Zhao Yuran. The two of them are sitting on the sofa and having a conversation about the fight. Zhao shares that she would like to remove Bai Xiaoyi from the fight, but the school said that the competition will take place the day after tomorrow. So, the teacher continues, Bai Xiaoyi was not allowed to be removed from the competition, and the only option in this case is to transfer Yuli to another educational institution at her request. But Yuli must win this fight, Yuna insists. Zhao Yuran tries to object to her, because she is not able to change the rules. When the teacher addresses Yuna according to her title of centurion, she, lighting a cigarette, reports that this glorious title was forbidden to be pronounced 10 years ago. The cigarette is smoldering in Yuna's mouth. She looks indifferently over her glasses and asks if Zhao Yuran did everything she could to help Yuli. "The school is to blame for everything," says Zhao Yuran, "because if it weren't for your regiment that fought so desperately on the battlefield 10 years ago, we could not count on a peaceful sky above our heads." Zhao Yuran remembers her promise to Yuli, which states that if Yuli took the post of class representative, then teacher Zhao, in turn, would do everything possible to help her enter the order. But she lost, Yuna concludes gloomily, exhaling smoke from a cigarette. She can't bear to consider her daughter a failure. She had completely different hopes for her. In any case, Yuna is grateful to Zhao Yuran for an honest and frank conversation, and the teacher gets ready to go home. Before Zhao Yuran can cross the threshold of Yu's house, Chinu appears nearby and offers to escort his class teacher home. The teacher is embarrassed. She did not expect such an invitation from Chinu, but she agrees and thanks the guy for his help. The conversation gradually dried up, and they had already approached Zhao Yuran's house, when suddenly Chinu dared to ask a question. He was worried about whether Bai Xiaoyi would be the representative of the high school students from now on. The class teacher, with bitterness in her voice, replies that, unfortunately, these are the rules. If no one defeats him by tomorrow, then the title of representative passes to him. Teacher Zhao is alarmed by Chinu's curiosity, but he assures her that he is only worried about his comrades. Chinu's eyes glow demonically with red light while dramatic images of the battle between Bai Xiaoyi and Yuli flash through his mind, but he does not share his thoughts with Zhao Yuran. Only at the end does he throw out the phrase that this will help the classes unite, and this phrase leaves Zhao Yuran perplexed. She cannot understand what Chinu wanted to say by this. The morning of the next day arrives, the day after which the outcome of the rivalry will be decided and the future fate of Yuli and the title of high school representative will be determined. Bai Xiaoyi is already resting on the laurels of a winner. He doesn't even try to hide his jubilant appearance and is already dreaming of how universities will fight to the death to get him as their student. In his dreams, he was already at the very top, surrounded by beauties, luxury, money and success, and he didn't care about his classmates, because he never even considered them as competitors. Bai Xiaoyi's flight of fancy was interrupted by Qin Yu's loud voice, who had just entered their classroom and asked in an insolent tone whether the heir was there. Bai Xiaoyi freezes at his desk with his mouth open. He did not expect such insolence. He was used to everyone respecting and fearing him. And who dares to address him like that? Just another damn loser, Bai Xiaoyi shouts angrily. You can call me whatever you want, Qin Yu replies, and he goes to Bai Xiaoyi's desk. His classmates whisper. They have never seen Qin Yu before and are already anticipating a bright scene. At Bai Xiaoyi's questioning glance, Qin Yu replies that he came to challenge him, to which Bai Xiaoyi only laughs, because their strengths are clearly unequal. Qin Yu has a strength level of 11, and Bai Xiaoyi has only 7. Hands down, Bai Xiaoyi accepts the challenge. He stands there, grinning, and clearly feels like he's in charge of the situation. Suddenly, Qin Yu wraps his hands around Bai Xiaoyi's head and hits it on the floor with all his might, saying that Bai Xiaoyi should first bow politely. This is an official agreement. Qin Yu is clearly satisfied with the lack of resistance from Bai Xiaoyi, and his energy points jump up. Suddenly Zhao Yuren enters the room. She is very alarmed, because Qin Yu with his 11th level of strength can easily kill the unfortunate Bai Xiaoyi with one blow, but, obviously, it is too late to intervene. The rivals manage to enter the ring. The rules prohibit interfering in the course of the battle if the fighters have already taken their places in the ring, but Zhao Yuran thinks about whether she can intervene and help Bai Xiaoyi in the most dire case. Bai Xiaoyi is in the ring. He stands clutching his weapon in his hands and threatens Qin Yu. He says that after the battle it will be too late to fall on his knees and beg Dad to help. Qin Yu stands in the ring wearing only a shirt and trousers, and this greatly amuses Bai Xiaoyi, who is fully dressed in a fighting uniform. He teases Qin Yu that he is so poor and cannot even buy a uniform. All this talk doesn't affect Qin Yu much. He thinks that his opponent is overly talkative, and in general, the guy says, "You're hardly worthy of being treated with respect and observing the rules of decency." Bai Xiaoyi is outraged by Qin Yu's sharp tongue. He gathers energy for an attacking flow of life force. "From the moment you hit me, you are dead," Bai Xiaoyi continues his threats. He clearly intends to provoke and unbalance Qin Yu. "I have both attacking and defensive skills," Bai Xiaoyi boasts. "I could easily stand up to you, Li, and I can easily defeat a sucker like Qin Yu in no time." Bai Xiaoyi was so busy promoting his skills that he did not even notice how Qin Yu broke his weapon with a sharp and well-aimed blow, and from the very first blow it split into pieces. And now Qin Yu's fist flew straight into the face of Bai Xiaoyi, who was completely confused and did not even try to defend himself. The opinions of the crowd that had gathered around the fighting guys were divided. Some admired Qin Yu's strength, others rooted for Bai Xiaoyi. They did not believe that this was the end. It seems that Qin Yu was about to deliver the decisive, final blow, and he accompanied him with parting words for Bai Xiaoyi to be more humane in his next life. It was as if Qin Yu had been possessed by 1,000 demons. His eyes burned with red devilish fire, and his fists knew no mercy. It seemed that one more blow and Bai Xiaoyi would not live. Every blow of the fist could be fatal for him, and then finally Zhao Yuran decided to intervene and stop the massacre. "Qin Yu, you have won, stop," Zhao Yuran begged, but Qin Yu did not hear her. He was so overcome by the excitement of the battle. "That's enough, you'll kill him, stop it immediately." Zhao Yuran was torn, and then proceeded to threaten that Qin Yu's aunt and sister would be brought before a military tribunal in the event of Bai Xiaoyi's death. Seeing that neither words nor threats had the desired effect, Zhao Yuran decides to intervene in earnest. She enters the battle. Qin Yu can't afford to let his homeroom teacher get hurt and grabs her fragile wrist with his hand. "Teacher Zhao, what are you doing?" asks Qin Yu, but Zhao Yuran does not want to waste time explaining, and simply begs Qin Yu to trust her. Okay, Qin Yu agrees with the teacher, and in any case, the battle has lost interest for him, because an almost dead opponent is a boring opponent, and Bai Xiaoyi has been lying on the floor for a long time, a motionless carcass. "Thank you for your trust," Qin Yu's teacher thanks. She beams with a confident and almost happy smile. "Hurry up, take Bai Xiaoyi to the infirmary," Zhao Yuran immediately orders, but his condition is not the biggest of the teacher's problems and concerns. She is much more alarmed that the white dogs will certainly want to figure everything out, and considering who Chinu is, this can become a serious problem. Suddenly, an idea strikes Zhao Yuran, and now she offers Chinu to become the representative of the senior classes, which is fair, by the way, because he beat up by Xiao Yi in front of everyone. A little later, Zhao Yuran sits in the director's office. She herself feels like a guilty student, because not only the director's stern gaze is directed at her, but also a couple of his colleagues. Director Lee wants to know firsthand all the details of the incident in the classroom, and he is also very interested in Zhao's opinion about Chinu's act. He asks her to evaluate what happened. Zhao Yuran is determined to protect her student. She insists that Chinu's behavior is completely justified, because it was Bai Xiao Yi who first attacked Yuli, thereby breaking the rules and provoking Chinu. Deputy Director Liu, a middle-aged man with a red mustache, paused thoughtfully and asked whether this circumstance, in Zhou's opinion, gave Chinu the right to beat a person. The second deputy director, Yang, an elderly gentleman with black glasses and a cigar in his mouth, said calmly that he did not see a problem. Why Bai Xiao Yi could beat someone with impunity and still remain untouchable? This is double standards, he added, releasing the ring smoke. Director Lee paused for a while and, after thinking, reminded the others that Chinu is a special student and finding him innocent could cause a public outcry. In response to this, Zhao Yuran said that she just had an idea about this. The principal agreed to listen to her proposal, and Zhao Yuran continued, she would like to appoint Chinu as the senior class representative. Deputy Principal Yang was so surprised by what he heard that he even dropped the cigarette from his mouth. He stood up, leaned his hands on the table and asked Zhou if Chinu himself was threatening her, or maybe, the deputy suggested, other teachers were threatening her. You are an excellent warrior, Mr. Yang continued, to which Zhou objected and offered to look at her hand, at the mark that remained there after Chinu's grip. How this guy, an ordinary warrior of the first rank, was able to overcome the protection of an experienced teacher. I feel that he is special and worthy to represent our school, said Zhao Yuran. The director and his deputies peered at her thoughtfully and in disbelief. Everyone was silent and did not know what to say, but Mr. Yang was the first to appear. He asked Zhao Yuran to quickly appoint Chinu as the official representative of the school, in which case it would help avoid additional problems. Zhao Yuran stood up and was about to leave the office, when she suddenly turned around and threw over her shoulder, Chinu's victory over Bai Xiao Yi still cannot be undone, so the white dogs will come to you anyway, and, wishing good luck, she waved her hand and disappeared behind the door. The trio of men led by the director were silent, but all three were tormented by the same question, is Zhao Yuran simply using them, dear gentlemen, for his own purposes? A few hours later, the principal's office is full of people again, not only the school staff, but also representatives of the Yuli and Bai Xiao Yi families have gathered here. The director greeted the audience and began his speech. Yuli and Yuna were sitting on the sofa opposite Bai Xiao Yi and his companion, and Bai Xiao Yi looked completely unwell, his arm was in a cast, and he was leaning on a crutch. The reason why I have gathered you all here today, Director Lee began his speech, is already clear to everyone, so let's get straight to the point, he suggested. Yuna sat with her arms wrapped around herself and tried her best to remain calm, while Yuli could not sit still. Opposite them sat Bai Xiao Yi, accompanied by a member of his family, a stern and gloomy-looking old man with a black raven on his shoulder. Yuli seemed to have just now noticed the pitiful state her former opponent was in, covered in bandages. He sat pressed into the sofa, and Yuli did not miss the opportunity to tease him, asking if it was Chinu who treated him like that. In response to it was Bai Xiao Yi who burst into loud curses. Bai Xiao Yi's companion, who is also the president of the White Dogs Company, decided to intervene and said that he highly values and respects the contribution of Lady Yuna on the battlefield, and therefore he wants to ask for forgiveness on behalf of his son and offer in return for Chinu everything that his soul wishes, any money, equipment, elixirs. Mrs. Yunu seemed amused by such a proposal, and she refused with a laugh. She explained her refusal by the fact that she herself needed a guy. Mr. Bai seemed unaccustomed to rejection, so he tried to pressure Yunu and said that he only treated her with respect because he honored her past exploits. Well, the old man was getting impatient. He threatened to get Chinu one way or another, otherwise he would just get rid of him with someone else's hands. Little Yuli obviously didn't like the direction the conversation was going, who, clenching her fists and looking at Mr. White Dogs with an angry look, said that you are acting like this here, uncle. The girl simply lost her temper and, jumping up from the sofa, ordered the old man to shut his mouth. The mother tried to calm her wayward daughter by placing her hand on her shoulder, but she just waved her off. However, Elder Yu could not tolerate threats against her family, so she looked Old Man Bai straight in the eyes and asked if she could regard his words as a direct threat to a family member of a representative of the knightly order. The trio, consisting of the director and his deputies, froze. It seems that they did not expect that the meeting would take such a turn. None of them dared to intervene. Mr. Bai was the first to break the silence. He objected that Chinu was not a member of the Yu family at all, but just a demon. The old man lit a cigar and thought. He was surprised why Yuna rushed so much to protect this devilish brat. Did she really value him so much? Deputy Director Yang decided to remind everyone what the Knights of the Order are. If their closest relatives are in danger, they are ready to kill even the king himself to save them. Raymond, the deputy head of the Storm Knights, was especially famous for this. In the past, something tightly connected him with Yuna. Be that as it may, the situation dragged on, and Yuna got tired of waiting, and she notified the others that they were leaving, since no one could offer another solution. No one tried to stop them, only Old Man Bai threw words after her that the day would come when Chinu would go crazy and kill their entire family simply because it was in his nature as a devil. Yuna didn't even seem to react to these threats, didn't turn around, only noticed that she was making a bet with one man. They were betting on whether Chinu would awaken his true essence and become a monster. Deputy Yang guessed that the same man had probably bet that Chinu would go crazy sooner or later. It seems that Yuna was waiting for this question. Straightening up proudly, she said that it was her own bet, but if anything happens, she will certainly settle this situation. At this very time, very far from the director's office, Chinu was on the bus to the high school league arena, where the teacher had sent him, and could not understand why he was sneezing all the time and who was constantly thinking about him. Riding on the bus was clearly not the most exciting activity. Chinu was tired of looking at the monotonous landscapes outside the window, and was pretty bored. Suddenly, in the window of a bus traveling nearby, he noticed a girl. Judging by her appearance, she was also going to a league competition and was just as bored on the trip. The girl noticed Chinu's gaze and felt uncomfortable. She didn't even realize that another devilish joke was already brewing in his head. Smirking slyly, Chinu was already anticipating the girl's reaction to his prank. He was already having a lot of fun in advance. Of course, the girl couldn't help but notice the horns on Chinu's head, one whole, the other broken, and he decided to play along and fully enter the role of a demon. He waved his hand at her and said, "Yes, I'm a demon, I'm hiding my true essence, but one day I will destroy you all." "Long live the demon race," Chinu shouted, and burst into truly demonic laughter. It even seemed to the girl that for a moment the guy had turned into a 2-meter terrible devil. The reaction was not long in coming. The terribly frightened girl rushed to the driver and begged him to immediately stop the bus, because the demons were about to catch up with them. They were already close. The poor driver almost lost his grip on the steering wheel from shock. The bus tilted and almost turned over from such maneuvers. Chinu seemed to sincerely enjoy this picture. He sat back contentedly in his seat and only managed to collect energy points. "And I don't remember the last time I reaped such a generous harvest. If only it could happen every time," the guy thought contentedly and dreamily. With such entertainment, the road flew by unnoticed, and now Chinu, among a crowd of the same teenagers, was present at the opening ceremony of the competition. Spectators and participants were asked to take their places. Chinu looked around and noted with satisfaction that there were quite a lot of people around, and everyone knew why. The fact of the crowd amused the guy so much. In his wildest dreams, Chinu already saw himself reaping a bountiful harvest, a real harvest, he thought. The flow of his thoughts was interrupted by the feeling of the proximity of a familiar energy. Someone clearly and unequivocally felt hostility towards the guy. There was no need to guess for a long time about the source of hostility, since Chinu noticed Aunt Yunu nearby, and with her Yuli, who he did not expect to see here. It seems that Chinu came to the conclusion that Auntie found out what Bai Shao Yi did and decided to show kindness, in which case I should repay such a wonderful gift accordingly. Apparently, by retribution for a wonderful gift, Chinu understood something completely different, because he did not hesitate to show his middle finger and poke it in Yuli's face. Yuli's reaction was not long in coming. She immediately burst into an angry tirade, among which the most polite and decent word was asshole. Chinu happily caught these rays of hatred and hostility, because they only made him stronger. At this time, a presenter in a suit climbed onto the stage and, picking up a microphone, loudly announced the start of the high school league competition. The audience froze in anticipation. These competitions, the presenter continued, like other similar events, are held with the support of 123 companies and all respected orders of knighthood. The presenter recalled that 24 knightly regiments arrived at the competition as honorary observers. The audience in the stands waited impatiently. They wanted to quickly see the spectacle for which they, in fact, had gathered here. Some of those present shouted slogans about valor and justice. Others chimed in, shouting something about harmony, and there was excitement in the stands. Among the heated crowd was Chinu. He was also in anticipation of the spectacle and the hot battle. The presenter still did not let up. He turned to the participants and assured them that people and werewolves are united, expressed hope that the participants would lead the country to a brilliant future, and called on them to applaud as loudly as possible. Chinu stood in the middle of the podium and hoped that not everyone had arrived yet, because he really wanted to earn more energy. Meanwhile, the rules were announced to all those present. According to them, each participant had 5 minutes to introduce himself. The host of the competition reminded that each participant was watched by all the inhabitants of the continent. The participants listened attentively and, by putting their hand to their heads, made it clear that they knew the rules and agreed to follow them. One of the participants shouted something about how the human race is invincible, and everyone else will soon be able to see this. Chinu really did not like this statement. Chinu grinned. He had already taken a proud and militant pose. The space around him was magically empty. Without any hesitation at all, Chinu raised both hands and showed his middle fingers to everyone present, and then shouted to the crowd, "Scum, come here." The guys, who had never seen Chinu before, looked at him in admiration and amazement. One boy even applauded. Director Li turned to teacher Zhao and asked if she thought Chinu was going too far with his obscene behavior, to which she sheepishly replied, "Perhaps." The presenter continued to announce the rules of the competition. According to them, this time 1358 participants had to go to the Nova Islands for a whole week. In accordance with the rules, upon arrival on the islands, participants were provided with food for the first 3 days, but during the following days they would be forced to provide their own provisions. But getting food was not the most difficult task, because tens of thousands of monsters were also released on the island. They are extremely dangerous and deadly. These monsters are real killing machines. Depending on their strength they were divided into levels from 1 to 5. Special energy balls were implanted into the bodies of these monsters, and the participants' task is to collect as many balls as possible, and their final rating depends on this. According to this ranking, the top 100 participants will be selected to take part in the final battle in the arena. The presenter did not fail to boast about the latest achievements of scientists, special balls that can not only show participants live, but also save their lives at critical moments. However, not everything is so simple. A participant who resorts to the help of this miracle of technology will be immediately disqualified, and special belts will show their physical condition at a given time. As soon as the physical condition deteriorates critically, the participant will be immediately teleported to a safe place, but also immediately disqualified. Well, with this the long list of rules finally came to an end. The presenter finished his speech, and from that moment the participants could prepare to depart. To move the participants, a special technique was used, also one of the latest achievements of scientists, in fact, instant teleportation. The competition participants, including Chinu, lined up in a circle in the middle of the football field. Once, a flash seemed to pierce the space, as if lightning and fog enveloped the field. When the fog cleared, only the presenter and the mentor stood in the middle of the field. All the participants in the competition seemed to have disappeared into thin air. Chinu himself did not even have time to realize how in a second, instead of a football field, he found himself in an airplane at the window. The movement technique seemed rather unusual to him, but, without a doubt, he liked it. Before he had time to come to his senses after teleportation, he heard voices from all sides. they shouted only one word, demon. Chinu looked around, screams came from all the neighboring rows of the plane, and he realized that they were talking directly to him. Demon, you will not live. Chinu heard a cry from a row of seats behind, and then saw some guy with frenzy and anger stretching his hands towards him. It wasn't that Chinu was scared, he didn't have to deal with such impudent people, but the thought that it shouldn't be like this didn't leave him. At this time, Yuna and Yuli were sitting in the competition hall. They were talking among themselves about whether Chinu could take a good position in the ranking. Yuna personally doubted it. But Yuli thought differently. She considered Chinu to be a rather strong warrior, because even she was no match for him. But Yuna reminded her daughter that the region in which they are located has been fighting demons for thousands of years, which means that in the final score Chinu has no chance, no matter how hard he tries. Do you think other players will allow him to take a good position in our environment, which is saturated with hatred of demons? Yuna asked, but Yuli tried to object to her mother. She said that Chinu is not at all like other demons, he is completely different. She couldn't do it face to face, so she mentally wished Chinu good luck. Luck would have come in handy for Chinu at this particular moment. He was forced to fight off the angry crowd on board the plane, and even fight off being called a demon. The ringleader of the brawlers urged the others not to believe Chinu. After all, it doesn't matter so much whether he is a demon or not, it's always nice to get rid of a competitor. Chinu endured for a long time, but he couldn't stand being treated like a punching bag. He shouted, "Take it, you asshole," and punched the attacker straight in the face with all his might. Not only he, but also a couple of other aggressive guys got it. Chinu decided to teach them good manners. The asshole clearly didn't like the new nickname. He wanted to take revenge, to fight back, but he was still lying on the floor after knocking out Chinu. "Don't get me wrong," Chinu said blandly, but his look said that he was clearly not sincere. "I'm talking about," Chinu continued, but made a theatrical pause, and at that moment he pulled a parachute that had come from out of nowhere over his shoulders. "About everyone present here," Chinu finally finished his sentence, smiled ironically and pointed his finger down. All the assholes on board were simply dumbfounded. Yes, it was exactly this kind of reaction, aggressive and bordering on hatred, that Chinu was counting on. He was already collecting a generous harvest of energy points. No one expected what happened in the next seconds. Chinu punched through the skin of the plane with a swift and powerful fist and shouted, "Hey, idiots, come on, move your flippers." Chinu was the first to jump out of the plane. The other passengers seemed dumbfounded in shock, and Chinu thought how slow they were. One of the passengers jumped out after Chinu, but bad luck, he did it without a parachute, and therefore, already in flight, he screamed terribly in fear and began to beg for help. Help did not take long to arrive. The saving ball had already arrived and teleported the unlucky enemy to a safe place, after which he was immediately disqualified. At that time, Chinu was floating on a parachute and felt extremely lucky and cunning. The rest of the competition participants watched what was happening with undisguised envy and anger. They could not believe that a guy from an unknown school could pull off such a trick and go unpunished. At this time, Chinu gently parachuted into the arena. The arena was a mountainous area. Cliffs covered with dense forests turned into valleys. Chinu watched the smooth descent. Yuli held her breath, and when his feet touched the ground, she could not hide her glee. Once again her brother turned out to be the most inventive, but the school principal clearly did not share her delight. "The elite of our school," the director began to be indignant, but could not continue. He even lost consciousness from excess emotions. Yuli was confused and did not know how to react. Suddenly she heard a cry, "Look, this guy is finished, just look who has his eye on him." But Yuli was afraid to look, she was afraid to see the worst. Her fears were confirmed. Behind the unsuspecting Chinu, who was just wondering where the nearest supply warehouse was, stood a third-level ghost bull. It didn't take a monster expert to realize that this bull was very dangerous. His eyes were bloodshot, steam was pouring from his nostrils, and he was clearly preparing for an attack rush. Meanwhile, Chinu found out that he had to walk as much as 27 kilometers to the nearest resource warehouse, and set out. Yuli, who was watching this scene through the screen, begged him to be careful, but he, of course, could not hear her. Chinu was trying to figure out the intricacies of the island's paths in order to understand which path would lead him to the warehouse, and behind him, not one, but two huge ghostly bulls were watching him. It is worth noting that at least the weather on the island was favorable, the sun was shining brightly, the greenery was blooming wildly, and flocks of unknown birds were soaring in the cloudless sky. However, not only birds were soaring, making their way through the thickets of lush greenery. Chinu was already tired of fighting off hordes of insects. He could not understand why there were so many of them here. Speaking of insects, it was no more difficult than swatting a fly for Chinu to deal with two ghostly bulls, and now they were already lying defeated, with their tongues hanging out and glassy eyes. At this time, in the school assembly hall, the director and his deputies were watching what was happening on the island from their screens. They could not understand when Chinu managed to become so strong. However, they had one guess. After all, Chinu was raised by Yuna, the hero of the knightly order. Perhaps this explained his strength and incredible skills, but the director admitted that he had to check Chinu first. The teachers, led by the director, asked Mrs. Zhao in what course students are taught to deal with monsters of this level. She replied that not at any, and this confuses the director. Was the guy really able to learn this himself? The teachers watched in amazement as Chinu was eating a ball of energy right now as if it were an apple, and they couldn't believe their eyes. Does he really eat balls of energy? The teachers wondered. This is a key item for completing the mission. Chinu couldn't forget about it. One of the deputies objected that it would be better to eat balls than monster meat. Chinu ate the ball of energy with appetite, and the carcass of a dead bull lay nearby, but the guy was not interested in it. He still didn't know how to cook. Having refreshed himself, Chinu decided that now was the time to earn points, and went to explore the island. The next rival and victim turned out to be a brown bear, from whom Chinu took the cubs, which infuriated her to the point of rage. The next source of energy turned out to be a cougar. Chinu teased the wild cat, and then deftly climbed up a tree so high that even the predator could not reach him. Then he decided to practice rock climbing. The guy climbed into the nest of a mountain eagle and gobbled up its eggs. The angry bird gave him more than 200 energy points. The competitors were shocked. They were annoyed by Chinu's bold and desperate behavior. He seemed to not think about his life at all. His fearlessness bordered on madness. Chinu did not pay any attention to his rivals. He continued to amuse himself, found a nest of poisonous snakes and reptiles. They twined around him like vines, but this brought a lot of energy points, and he put the largest monitor lizard on his shoulders as a trophy. Suddenly, among the thick grass, he noticed someone's fluffy ears. Most of all, they resembled the ears of a small dog, and, of course, Chinu decided not to miss his next victim. He rushed forward as quickly as he could, in an attempt to catch the mysterious animal that was so cleverly hiding among the thickets. With a jubilant cry, he caught it, grabbed it at the very tips of the beast's ears, and pulled with all his might. Yeah, he definitely didn't expect to catch such an animal. It wasn't a dog at all, but a young and very attractive young girl, obviously one of the participants in the competition. It was her red head that was decorated with these cute ears. It is not known who was more frightened, Chinu, the unfamiliar girl who screamed loudly in fear and surprise, or her four sisters in the order, who were hiding nearby and were the first to suspect that their fifth sister was in danger. Four pairs of eyes stared at Chinu, who continued to firmly hold and pin his eared prey to the ground. Sisters, the girl called for help, and the sisters' eyes glowed with a militant red fire. They were ready to immediately rush to protect one of them. Don't be afraid, baby, we're already on our way. With such an encouraging cry, the sisters rushed to the defense, ready to recapture their girl even from the devil himself. Little sister was already bursting into tears, and Chinu looked embarrassed and tried to justify himself, saying that this is not at all what you thought. At least the fifth sister, the dog Coco, seemed unimpressed by Chinu's excuses. Clasping her knees with her hands, she sat on the ground and continued to cry inconsolably. The fourth sister, the dog Lon Lon, turned to Chinu and praised his fighting skills and appreciated them. The third sister, the dog Ki Ki, was not so friendly and supportive. Apparently, she was unable to forgive him for the offense inflicted on his sister, and she laconically wished Chinu to die. The second sister, the dog Yo-Yo, decided to show prudence and understanding. She seemed to be lenient towards Chinu's trick. However, all this did not help Chinu. The sisters were quick to kill, and within a few minutes Chinu was moaning and complaining, in his words, a little more, and at the hands of four sisters at once he would have died. One of the sisters, however, remembered that once before she had already seen Chinu, but this meeting in person turned out to be much more interesting. Chinu, who all this time continued to carry the carcass of the monitor lizard on his shoulders, finally threw it off and turned to the sisters. Proudly holding his prey by the tail, Chinu asked the sisters if any of them knew how to cook. After all, girls should be able to feed a man. Chinu was not mistaken in his assumptions. All 4 sisters confirmed that something, and they know how to cook and love. The eyes of the youngest of the sisters, the dog Coco, lit up with excitement. She finally calmed down, and began enthusiastically and bloodthirsty to chop and butcher the monitor lizard carcass. One of the older sisters was busy seasoning the meat. Apparently, the sisters liked spicy food, and the monitor lizard meat looked dry, tough and tasteless. Chinu watched the sisters busy cooking and felt as if he was watching a cooking show. The girls were so passionate about cooking that Chinu was at a loss as to what fantastic dish awaited him in the end. The cooking process continued. Only the head of the reptile was visible on the surface of the cauldron. The smell, without a doubt, was emanating from the cauldron. Unexpectedly, Chinu saw that he had gained extra energy points. He was at a loss as to how the process of cooking a reptile could make it even more angry than when it finished off. The sisters and Chinu crowded around the cauldron. No one dared to try the meat first. The girls decided that Chinu should be the first, which he refused, citing the fact that this was pure suicide. Guests are fed first, this is the rule. The sisters continued to insist. Chinu began to suspect something. Chinu thanked the girls for their kindness and hospitality, but he did not want to be the first to start the meal. He invited the sisters to treat themselves. It seems that all this was starting to turn into a squabble and a fight. Chinu and the sisters were arguing and swearing. They persistently tried to feed the guy, and he grabbed one of the sisters. "Hey bastard, let go of my sisters," a scream was heard, followed by a pair of shiny katanas whizzing through the air behind Chinu. Is it really another sister? Chinu thought. He definitely didn't expect such a turn of events, and then he heard the patter of feet behind him. Someone was rushing through the forest. Yes, without a doubt, it was another sister. She was flying like a bullet towards Chinu. A long tail fluttered behind her. The sister untwisted the deadly blades and showed with all her appearance that she was ready to attack and attack. Her hands tightly gripped the hilts of her swords. She was clearly not ready to show mercy and friendliness. Chinu was confused. He watched in puzzlement as another sister appeared, and she was already preparing for the first blow. "Sister," Chinu once again heard the girls' voices, while he looked at his next rival with all his eyes. The new sister jumped high, preparing to attack, and Chinu, in turn, prepared to defend himself. Chinu knew very well how to play on sisterly feelings, and grabbed the youngest of the girls, Sister Coco, by the hair. The calculation worked correctly. The older sister immediately rushed to the defense of the younger sister, about to be ready to destroy the offender. Chinu did not seem to be afraid at all. Yes, this was not what the elder sister was counting on. She thought that Chinu would simply tremble with fear. The guy held the girl tightly by the hair, and the elder sister was simply raging. Chinu seemed to her like a real devil. "Let me go, you damned demon," the little sister finally said, and tried her best to break free and loosen Chinu's grip. Suddenly, Chinu released the girl with a sharp movement, and she flew head over heels forward, straight to the ground. Seeing that she had fallen and hit herself painfully, the sisters surrounded the youngest in a tight ring and tried to inquire about her well-being. Chinu didn't seem to care. He continued to have fun, making fun of his sister's ears, and his comparison with a dachshund seemed especially witty to him. The elder sister, however, did not share his fun. She raged terribly, called Chinu a one-horned devil and said that she would not allow herself to be bullied. "I'll tear off your horns," the elder sister threatened. "Damn, you are unfinished," and swung her weapon at Chinu. Chinu tried to stop the assassination attempt and asked if she knew that her sisters were trying to poison him. The sister did not answer anything. She only asked the other sisters to get ready in group. They responded with readiness. For Chinu, all this began to resemble some kind of gang warfare, in the center of which he found himself. Now he was completely pressed against a tree, and warlike girls surrounded him on all sides. "We decided to get into trouble." "Yes?" Chinu asked. It's not that he wanted to avoid a fight or it wasn't his rule to hit girls. He was just pretty tired of this drama. "If so, then come on, attack." The guy egged on the sisters, and as soon as they approached him, he uprooted the tree that was behind him and easily scattered the girls like kittens. The eldest sister realized how powerful the warrior was in front of her, and realized that the sisters could not cope with him, so she decided to take matters into her own hands. The sister angrily unleashed a meat grinder of deadly blades on the tree, but Chinu only laughed, comparing it to a pencil sharpener. Chinu easily grabbed the tree, which now truly resembled a sharpened giant pencil, and with the thought that he needed to stop his elder sister as soon as possible, he rushed towards her. The young demon and the older sister clashed in battle, a sharpened hefty tree against the sister's swords. The elder sister's sharp sword went deep into the wood, so much so that the girl could not pull out her weapon. The sword was firmly lodged in the log. The girl hung half a meter above the ground, holding the hilt of the sword, and Chinu easily held the log, not forgetting to shower his sister with threats and ridicule. Swinging, he threw the log with all his might. The impact sent the girl flying a good 100 meters deep into the forest. Chinu, in his usual ironic manner, wished her all the best. But it was not so easy to deal with this girl. She was going to try a new technique on Chinu, Earth Strike. A whirlwind of stones and boulders swirled around the elder sister, and with force she brought it down on Chinu, who was knocked down. He was clearly not prepared for such an attack. It was like a clash of titans. No one wanted to give in or give up. Chinu defended himself from the whirlwind of flames, soil and stones that his elder sister aimed at him. The sister was exhausted, and at this time Yuli were watching the fight through the screen. Yuli noticed that older sister had the 3rd level of strength. Yuna agreed and admitted that for a girl of that age such an indicator is very rare. The girl from the sisterhood has a great future ahead of her. Yuli watched intently as the girl commanded the elements. It seemed that these clods of earth were like bullets that were deadly to Chinu. Chinu and sister were clearly exhausted from the battle, but it was not in the nature of each of them to give up. There could only be one winner. Xiao takes a breath. She cannot understand how Chinu could resist her. Perhaps the whole point is that he is a child of the devil, the girl guesses. Elder sister is looking for a vulnerability in Chinu's defense. She knows that the demons on the other side are immune to such attacks, but what is Chinu's secret? In his mind, Chinu recognizes the strength and power of this girl, and understands that he cannot allow her to attack him again. The best defense is an attack, and Chinu decides to attack the girl in close combat. The sister realizes how dangerous close combat can be for her. She should not allow the guy to get close to her at all costs. With a loud exclamation, the girl calls on the forces of the earth to help, and now a giant avalanche of soil, stones, and clay flies towards Chinu. He had never seen such power before. The earth avalanche was simply huge. It was destroying everything in its path and was about to sweep away him too. Calculating his time and strength, Chinu pushes off from the ground and jumps high. His idea is to jump over the avalanche. He lands after jumping. The danger has passed, but only for this second. The battle is not over yet. What are you doing? Come over, the elder sister thinks. She is annoyed that once again she was unable to deal with Chinu, but there are still more techniques in her warrior arsenal. The next move, a new blow, and the trees, like drills, fly like bullets at Chinu, but he deftly dodges and does not allow himself to be hit. In rage and the heat of battle, he kicks the nearest tree. From a powerful blow it splits in half. Chinu kicks the upper part of the trunk into the sky. Dust and smoke are everywhere. Nothing can be seen in the turmoil. The eldest sister finally saw through Chinu's cunning plan. He wanted to cover everything in smoke so that she would be distracted by him, and at that time get closer and engage in hand-to-hand combat. However, Chinu miscalculated, because his sister belonged to the order of dogs, which means she was completely immune to such tricks. The sister was sure that victory was in her pocket, because she had so cleverly outwitted Chinu and was about to catch him. Suddenly, a cauldron of cooking, with boiled meat of an unfortunate monitor lizard, flew into the air. The girl was confused. She did not understand what was happening. While she was figuring out what this meant, Chinu's tenacious fingers closed around her neck from behind. The grip was strong, and he only said 2 words, "You lost." The spectators who are watching the competition through the screen are in shock, because Chinu openly spits on the rules and plays dirty. For an unfair victory over a third-rank player he gets a foul. But Yuli openly rejoices and cheers for Chinu. Her mother shakes her head in doubt. is this really the same Chinu she knew? A sudden realization dawns on Yunu. She understands that with such power, Chinu could have done something to Yuli long ago, but he did not use his power against her. Perhaps this means something. At this time, Chinu is warming himself by the fire with his sisters. Silence reigns. The vibes of hostility emanating from the girls are impossible not to catch. Is this guy really not like other demons? The elder sister was tormented by doubts, and Chinu decided to finally dispel doubts, and, pointing to the monitor lizard dish, said that this is the purest proof that the sisters wanted to poison him. The poor monitor lizard's muzzle was sticking out of the plate. The dish did not look particularly appetizing, but the sister explained this by the fact that the appearance of food can often be deceiving, and it is not a fact that the demon's digestive system would not have overcome reptile meat. Well, Chinu said, if appearances are deceiving, then try it yourself, he insisted, but the elder sister knew the culinary skills of the younger sisters, and therefore was sure that the dish was absolutely not edible. It was immediately necessary to distract Chinu from this conversation, and the elder sister said that she knew a place where everyone could get something to eat. Chinu must have interpreted her words in his own way, because he took and dumped a whole pot of Varna soup right into his elder sister's mouth. She immediately fell unconscious to the ground. The sisters surrounded her and squealed in horror. Chinu only thought that perhaps he was a little hasty with conclusions. Probably, by edible, the sister meant something else. The third day of the competition arrived. 4 people were sitting in the clearing around a fire, apparently the organizers of the competition. They were talking about how they planned to distribute food to the participants later. During their conversation, meat was being fried over a fire, and one of the group suggested that they quickly eat the kebab while it was hot, because cooled meat is not half as tasty. He swung, and the employee himself did not understand where the hot skewers with the fragrant kebab went from his hands. He just held them, but apparently not tightly enough. The employee turned his head in bewilderment, looking around, when suddenly he saw little Ko on the tree, on the highest branch, holding a kebab skewer in her teeth. With a mouth full of meat, she muttered, "What a delicious meal." Apparently she liked the taste of meat better than boiled monitor lizard. One of the group of employees tried to lure and calm down Ko. She said that they had a lot of food here and did not need to snatch it from someone else's hands. The employee didn't even have time to really finish her speech when a fist hit her from behind in the head and knocked her out and she fell unconscious. Of course, the fist belonged to Chinu. With a proud look he looked around and invited the sisters to pounce on the food supplies. There was so much stuff here, beef, chicken, fish, and lamb. The girls greedily dug into the fried chicken legs, and Chinu didn't even know which meat to pounce on first. "You were right, there is a lot of food here, including chicken wings." The girl thanked one of her sisters, but she was deaf to the praise. The food completely occupied her. Suddenly, the sister took a closer look at the pass that fell out of the pocket of the employee who was beaten by Chinu. The inscription on it said that she belonged to the third group of resource distribution personnel. Only at that moment the girl realized that the employees had been attacked. No one paid much attention to this, and the eldest sister and Chinu were completely blind. Their minds and stomachs were firmly taken over by food. However, the elder sister was the first to realize it. She ordered to quickly grab the food and immediately run away so as not to fall into the clutches of other employees and participants. "It seems we are late," one of the sisters exhaled doomedly, seeing silhouettes in the distance. But Chinu was not confused or afraid. On the contrary, he stopped the sisters and said that perhaps they would soon be able to get much more. A group of other participants, led by the captain, flew through the forest. They smelled the smell of fried meat and hoped that this was a point with resources, although the rules said that food was distributed only on the first day. The captain of the group said as they ran that after 90% of the participants jumped off halfway and were unable to get provisions, the competition management would not allow everyone to die of hunger. The leader of the group suggested that the food outlets would disappear only after all the participants took the food they were owed. The group finally came out into the clearing. It was indeed a food point, since there were boxes of supplies around, and they were met by a guy in an employee's uniform. "Welcome," the employee politely greeted them, but for some reason red horns were sticking out through his uniform cap. "We would like to get food for 4, the group captain asked. The employee in the cap nodded, saying, "No problem." The The horned employee clarified what rank of supplies the captain and his group were counting on. The group members opened their mouths in amazement. They did not know about any rank of supplies, they were just hungry and wanted to get food as quickly as possible. The employee led them to the box and showed them all the delicacies. Their eyes ran wild from the delicious dishes. There was chocolate, and hamburgers, and kebabs, and shellfish. There was even beer and onigiri. Choose, don't be shy, we feed the participants at the highest level, he praised the food employee. The group led by the captain opted for food set D, which included shellfish, kebabs, and beer. The choice was obvious, they were already salivating with anticipation. In this case, said the employee in the uniform cap, prepare 4 balls of energy as payment for the provisions, 1 ball for each set. The captain of the group was dumbfounded. What kind of payment was there? He was sure that food was provided to the competition participants for free. Of course, the employee nodded affirmatively. Don't you know that free cheese only comes in a mousetrap, he continued. The captain of the group tried to appeal to the employee to humanity and conscience, because isn't this the main thing in these competitions? Only set A is provided for free, which includes protein bars and water, and a fee is charged for the best set. Don't you want the best for you? The employee teased the group captain. The captain tried to bargain and said that 4 balls of energy were all that his group had managed to collect over the past few days. The sisters, hiding behind the boxes of supplies, watched as Chinu, and it was undoubtedly him, dressed in the uniform of an employee, tried to fool the group and lure the balls of energy from them. Chinu himself did not know whether he would succeed in his cunning trick, but he hoped that the balls of energy were almost in his pocket. Seeing that the group members were hesitating, Chinu took on a thoughtful look and said, I didn't think that there would be people willing to do it so quickly, what a pity. The captain of the group was completely confused. He did not understand what kind of pity and what kind of people this strange employee was talking about. Meanwhile, the employee himself muttered that he had not said anything. The captain of the group was losing patience, because his team was starving, and he himself seemed to be being fooled, so he immediately demanded an explanation and was even ready to pay for information. Chinu pretended that so be it, now I will tell you the whole truth. After all, he is not some kind of tyrant. Before telling the whole truth, Chinu asked the group members to promise that they would keep secret the information that they now heard from him. Chinu paused dramatically and asked in a conspiratorial whisper if the participants knew why the foods were divided into ranks. The participants looked at each other in puzzlement. They did not know the answer, so Chinu continued. He said that these provisions were classified as hidden bonus items, and those who spent energy balls on purchasing them would receive a double reward at the end of the competition. The sisters watched with admiration and with bated breath how skillfully and deftly Chinu conducted his improvisation. Is this really true? The members of the hungry group shouted in amazement, disbelief mixed with delight in their eyes. Of course, Chinu hastened to assure them, I just liked you, you have a cute face, so I decided to tell you a secret, but I won't tell the others. What else are there? Are there really any other competitors? The group captain asked. In response to this, Chinu simply silently pointed his finger to the side. The group captain immediately took the hint and ordered his group to immediately take supplies. The captain and the group were already crowded at the counter. With a trembling hand, the captain handed Chinu 4 balls of energy in exchange for 4 sets of D-rank food. Did it really work? How cunning and smart he is. The sisters' admiration was mixed with respect for Chinu. They didn't believe until the very end that the plan would work. No one paid attention to the real competition staff, who, tied up, undressed, their uniforms taken away by Chinu, were sitting on the grass near the tent, and even with gags in their mouths. At this time, the school principal and his deputies were simply raging. Looking at the progress of the competition, they were extremely outraged by Chinu's behavior. In their opinion, he violated all possible rules. However, Director Yang himself, although he was surprised by Chinu's audacity, tried to protect him and said that the exchange of energy balls is not against the rules, it is just an exchange of resources. The others were confused. What should the other students do? Not everyone is as cunning and resourceful as Chinu. One gentleman objected that since the organizers were silent, it means everything was in order, otherwise their reaction to the violation of the rules would not have been long in coming. Chinu clearly had the talent of a speculator all this time. a whole line of people wishing to exchange their balls of energy lined up at the tray for rank D sets, and those watching were indignant. No one could stop the cunning demon. Balls of energy kept falling into the box. Chinu did not hide his delight at such a generous and fatty catch. When suddenly he heard a scream, someone was shouting that everyone had been deceived and Chinu was in fact not an employee. The participants, who had already exchanged their energy balls for food packages, looked around anxiously. The one who shouted the accusatory words was, as it turned out, one of the real employees. He managed to pull out the gag and was now shouting how unfairly they had been treated. Oh, this charge of overwhelming hostility literally hung in the air. It seemed that it could be physically felt. In the chaos and confusion, no one had time to understand where the kind employee in the cap and horns had actually gone. The participants were busy fighting with each other. Finally, the fooled participants came to their senses. They urgently wanted to return the balls, but Chinu had already disappeared, only his heels stomped along the path. Chinu rejoiced at how cleverly they pulled it all off. The energy numbers were off the charts. "Guy, how many balls did you manage to collect?" one of the sisters asked while running, to which Chinu replied that it did not matter. "You're right, any quantity will suit us," the girl agreed, but Chinu was not going to share the balls. He considered them his prey. The idyll of running through the green forest was interrupted by the whistle of a spear. It flashed over the heads of the group at the speed of light. "Who else is this?" asked the elder sister, kicking the spear away. They did not expect to run into other warriors. The spear tumbled in the air from the blow and flew back to the one who launched it. A hand with long black sharp claws caught the spear in flight. Apparently, this was its owner. The javelin thrower praised one of the sisters for her reaction speed, but she herself stood victoriously surrounded by two warriors. One was small, in a green robe and hood, the other was very tall and strong. Her muscles could be the envy of any athlete. The javelin thrower smiled predatorily, showing sharp fangs and said, turning to one of the sisters, "How sad it would be to say goodbye to life, having such outstanding data." So, the two groups stood opposite each other, the dog sisterhood led by Chinu, and the spear throwers squad. They exchanged hostile glances. There was tension and hostility in the air. Chinu was the first to break the silence and greeted the unwanted and unexpected guests. The elder sister immediately understood who was in front of them. She shared her experience and observations with Chinu. According to her, one of the warriors belonged to the snake squad. They are good in hand-to-hand combat, and the other, the 2-meter one, belonged to the rhinoceroses. They are born conquerors and have a huge reserve of strength. But the most dangerous was the little girl in the hood, the older sister said. Apparently, she had already dealt with similar ones. The warriors, in turn, discussed Chinu and the dogs. They decided how they would divide the rivals and who would have the fate of dealing with Chinu. The girl in the hood said that she would deal with the dogs, and leave Chinu for the snake woman, the one who threw the spear. It seems that this situation completely satisfied the company of warriors, and the snake woman walked towards Chinu with a coquettish gait. The elder sister warned the younger sisters against participating in the battle, saying that this was not their fight. They were under no circumstances allowed to interfere. The snake woman began to seduce Chinu. According to her, she really liked him, and she invited him to have fun with her. Well, she knew how to seduce. Like a snake, she wrapped herself around her spear, took seductive poses and showed off all the charms of her figure. It was difficult, almost impossible for Chinu to resist her charms. He tried to convince himself that he was from a decent family and should not behave in a perverse manner. The doggy sisters' eyes almost fell out from such frank seduction. They thought that their new brother would lead them to victory. "Well, it seems you had a good time, and now the time has come to share," the snake woman said softly, and burst into a low, chesty laugh. "We will play until you lose." This is how the snake understood the game, and, putting her spear forward, rushed at Chinu. The elder dog sister begged Chinu to be careful. She was seriously worried about him. But there was no need to worry. Chinu easily intercepted the spear and blocked the snake's blow. Chinu suggested changing the rules of the game a little and playing, for example, until the first tears. Not only Snake was puzzled by such a proposal, her support group was frozen in incomprehension, and a group of dogs loudly supported Chinu. The snake did not respond to Chinu's proposal, so he took her silence as a sign of agreement. Playing by her rules, he suddenly transformed from a warlike demon into a charming and affectionate guy. He gently clung to the woman and whispered to her, "Auntie." The snake became terribly angry. It was not used to being played with like this. It radiated unprecedented hostility, which, in fact, was what Chinu wanted. She tried to hit Chinu with both blows of her tail and blows of her spear, but each time he was faster. The snake was furious. The prey was not as easy as she expected, and constantly escaped from her clutches. Elder Dog's sister watched the progress of the battle between Chinu and Snake, but could not help him. She was hit on the head as if by stone fists, although invisible, at least that's what it felt like. The blow thundered in the thicket of the forest, frightening the birds and disturbing the animals. Meanwhile, Chinu was almost cornered by Snake, holding onto a broken tree trunk and accusing Snake of being heartless and ruthless. "I don't know what to do," Chinu complained, to which the snake answered him, "Don't even try to save yourself." Instead, she advised him to think about her last words before death, and pointed her deadly spear at Chinu. Suddenly, Chinu had an idea: why not try to improve his body with the help of the system? The guy carried out the necessary manipulations, and the system notified him that his dynamic vision was perfect. His eyes lit up with rage. He felt a surge of new strength in his body, greedy for blood, and struck a killing blow. A swirl of spears, tails, horns, a tangle of bodies, here and there someone's red eyes flash. The sounds of battle are heard, but it's impossible to see anything. When suddenly Chinu saw no less bright blood on the bright green grass, it stood out as a ruby spot. "Is it really mine?" Chin thought, but I couldn't miss. However, it was indeed his blood. A thin stream flowed from the wound just above his wrist, and Chinu realized that due to the snake's slippery scales, the direction of his blow changed and he was injured by its spear. The snake seemed pleased. "Good blow," she praised Chinu. She stuck out her snake-like long and forked tongue, ran it along the blade of the spear and said, "It's a pity that we were born to kill monsters like you." The snake sat down in the clearing and began to spin the spear around itself, saying that this time it needed Chinu's legs. Chinu understood that he really had less combat experience, but he hoped to win the battle, to gain victory through other qualities. The snake's flexible, thin and long body stretched out, as if it was flying above the ground as it lunged at Chinu. She tried to catch up with Chinu, who was just running to the nearest tree. The snake asked if the guy really hoped to escape from her. "Who said that I want to run away?" Chinu answered. He was just hiding behind a tree and watching the snake's further actions. "I'm just warming up," Chinu shouted, and with one blow he uprooted a huge tree. Swinging, he threw the tree with all his strength towards the snake. It flew and looked like a real battering ram. The snake, however, was not afraid at all. With a spear at the ready, it ran towards Chinu. The snake deftly ducked down, pressed itself to the ground, the tree whistled over its head, and it grinned at how this idiot could forget that she was a snake. Smiling slyly, she crawled up to Chinu completely unharmed and promised that he would pay for his ignorance. A sly smile was still on her lips as she asked Chinu to remember the lesson she was about to teach him and not to call just anyone Auntie in the future. Oh, a forbidden move. The snake delivers another blow with the sharp tip of the spear to the most sensitive place, right between Chinu's legs. He will really remember such a lesson for the rest of his life. However, something did not go according to plan. The metal tip of the spear fell off, only one shaft remained. The snake was disarmed and discouraged. Finally, Chinu managed to catch the snake. He grabs the nimble opponent by the neck and explains to her that he threw the tree on purpose to distract her, but did not expect that she would be so ruthless as to attack him in such a place. Although Chinu's hand is tightly squeezing the snake's throat, she has the strength to ask how he managed to calculate everything, how he managed to block her attack, and, finally, how he was able to withstand the blow to such a sensitive male place. Chinu liked to tease and play with his victim. He lifted her higher by the neck and said, slowly and deliberately, that perhaps she had heard about a certain phenomenon. And this phenomenon is called steel balls. Chinu himself laughed like crazy at his own joke. His eyes glowed with a demonic red light as he invited the snake to think about what to do with it next. While Chinu was fighting with the snake, the dog sisters had their own battle with the girl in the green hood. It seems that it was her elder sister who called the most dangerous opponent of the entire trio. The sister turned out to be right. The girl in the hood was invulnerable and inaccessible. The sisters were exhausted trying to catch up with her. She was very fast, she moved at such a speed that her sisters could not catch up with her. The girl herself was yawning at that time with a bored and self-satisfied look. There was no match for her in strength here. Suddenly the girl saw a motionless body lying on the ground. At first she could not see who it was, and decided to get closer. It was the snake. She was completely exhausted, she did not have the strength to get up, and even her head could not hold up and constantly fell back, as if she had been well battered by the battle. The girl in the hood tried to find out from the snake what had happened. In response she opened her mouth, from which blood was oozing, and whispered in a barely audible voice that she could not continue any longer. The partner immediately guessed who was to blame, and began to find out what that guy, that vile demon, did to the snake. No one heard what the snake answered, but a very pleased Chinu came into the clearing and said that he had only tested his technique on the snake, the essence of which was that with its aggression it only made him stronger. Chinu walked closer to the hooded girl who was holding the lifeless body of the snake in her arms and, without a trace of compassion, said that a whole new world had suddenly opened up to him. The hooded girl, whose eyes were covered by a mask, turned to Chinu and said that since he managed to defeat the snake, then he was worthy to be her opponent. Come on, the girl beckoned to him. At this time she was taking out her weapon, crossed swords, from behind her back. Chinu told himself that he could handle it. He tried to cheer himself up before the fight. Suddenly he realized that he did not see the enemy in front of him, only a hurricane whirlwind with an indistinguishable silhouette was raging nearby. Another blink of an eye, and the crossed swords were pressed closely to Chinu's throat. He didn't even have time to understand how it happened, and the swift assassin introduced herself, looking straight into his eyes. Her name was Tang Leen. Chinu responded with the same look in her eyes. They were an extraordinary green color, like foliage in early May, and Chinu complimented her. "You look good in an assassin's costume," he said, and grabbed Tang Leen by her thin wrists. Tang Leen didn't even believe that the guy decided to fight the killer on his own. However, he had already managed to anger her, and her words sounded threatening. "As if you were calm before," Chinu replied, and tried to grab and immobilize his opponent harder. The dog sisters watched the fight with bated breath. They begged Chinu to be careful, because this time the opponent was extremely dangerous. The sisters explained that since childhood, Tang Leen was raised to be a killing machine. She is incredibly good at this role, and her speed is unmatched. At this time, Tang Leen continued to flicker in front of Chinu. He did not even have time to distinguish her in the whirlwind of the hurricane into which she turned. Tang Leen clearly feels superior as she spins around Chinu in this fast dance of death. Chinu is confused. He really doesn't have time to react to Tang Lien's actions. He doesn't even have time to see her herself. Only an emerald green whirlwind scurries around and back and forth. Tang Leen seems unimpressed with Chinu's abilities. She promises that it will all be over soon, and Chinu realizes that her opponent is right. She is much stronger than the snake. Chinu is thinking hard about how to outwit her opponent and emerge victorious from the fight once again. Swish, swish, Tang Leen scurries back and forth, attacks. Chinu realizes that her speed greatly exceeds his own, and he cannot compete with her. It is very difficult to resist when you do not have time to react to such fast, swift attacks. This is Chinu's conclusion at this second. A hail of blades falls on Chinu. There are countless attacks, and Chinu strives to at least simply defend himself and survive. The dog sisters held their breath, and not only them, but on the other side of the screen teacher Zhao is watching the battle, and she is also beside herself with excitement. The representatives and allies of the other students rejoice. Finally this devilish upstart will get his ass kicked. They are already anticipating Tang Lien's victory. Yuli is also here. She clenched her fists and is terribly worried about Chinu, but she is also haunted by the thought of how he dares to lose to someone other than her. Seeing her daughter's confusion, Yuna tries to cheer her up. She asks her daughter to pay attention to Chinu's expression. Yuli follows her mother's advice, peers into Chinu's face and sees a wicked grin, and Yuna continues to reassure her daughter, because it's not in vain that Chinu spent all these years. He probably has a plan. Chinu really had a plan. He understood that since he was inferior to the enemy in speed, and he had no experience in killing, he was in danger of dying from exhaustion in trying to fight back, which means he needed to act differently. Chinu decided to tease Tang Leen and called her a mediocre old lady, because she had not yet really managed to offend the guy, he began to mock her fighting abilities. The guy comes to the conclusion that he needs to let Tang Leen finish him off as quickly as possible. The audience holds their breath and cannot believe their eyes. Chinu looks around in search of Tang Leen, but does not see her anywhere. He urges her not to hide, but to fight as she should, and if she doesn't want to beat him, then at least let her give her a massage. The young demon offers to give Tang Leen 5 stars and come next time. With this he is trying to lure her out. A deadly whirlwind swirled around Chinu. Attentive spectators could notice that there were bleeding cuts on the guy's legs, face and body, and his clothes were cut and striped. However, Chinu braved with all his might. He continued to doubt Tang Lien's skills and laughed. Who could even think of calling the girl a killing machine? Yuli, who was watching the battle with bated breath, seemed to seriously doubt Chinu and asked her mother if it was time to order a coffin for the guy. He said, he was tall and healthy, he would have to have a coffin made to order. Yuna, meanwhile, was intently peering at the screen and thinking hard about what Chinu was planning. If Yuna could take a closer look at Chinu's face, she would certainly notice the insidious gleam of his demonic eyes, his sly grin on his blood-splattered face, and would understand that he was accumulating energy points through growing hostility. Tang Leen was distinguished by extraordinary patience. She could not be brought to the desired level of aggression. She did not succumb to Chinu's provocations, and this depressed him. He felt exhausted. Chinu could not understand why Tang Leen did not fall for his provocations, because the main problem of assassins is often a lack of restraint, so Chinu hoped that the enemy would soon lose control. This was the only way to victory. Suddenly, Chinu perked up and realized that he was about to have a chance to throw Tang Leen off balance. He noticed that she was just a little distracted, and this was enough for Chinu to make a sharp dash forward and deliver a series of blows. It was hard to believe, but Tang Leen actually hesitated and slowed down a little, and Chinu could not miss such an opportunity. Chinu decided to use the system to spend all his last accumulation of energy points and improve his body to the maximum. The immediate increase in speed and strength was felt not only by Chinu himself, but also by Tang Leen, who immediately felt the power of Chinu's fists. Wow, that speed! Tang Leen was surprised. How fast! She barely had time to think in the seconds between Chinu's swift and well-aimed blows. Chinu did not feel sorry for the girl at all. The blows landed on the face, on the head, as if he was taking revenge on her for the humiliation before. Swinging as hard as he could, Chinu threw the girl a good 10 meters forward with a powerful blow. Tang Leen understood that he was deliberately provoking her, but she could not do anything. His grip and blows were extremely strong. The girl had an internal monologue with herself. She convinced herself that she had to hold on. She couldn't show her weakness. She had to endure and win. She understood that she had previously been too focused on the desire to kill Chinu. This weakened her vigilance than he and took advantage of it. Another powerful blow from Chinu, and now Tang Leen is already lying on the ground. Her eyes are closed, pools of blood are purple around her, and she is completely exhausted. However, this was not the end. As she barely found the strength to open her eyes, she saw Chinu swinging for a fatal blow. Exterminating elbow technique, Chinu announced the reprisal. Tang Leen watched him with wide eyes, horror and a premonition of the inevitable end frozen in them. But the reprisal was not destined to happen. Chinu was suddenly thrown back and crushed by a huge tree trunk, out of nowhere. As soon as Chinu crawled out from under the log, he saw a rhinoceros woman in front of him. She said that she would not forgive him for the pain he caused her sister. Obviously, Rhino came to her sister's defense, and rushed into battle with fury and fearlessness. Seeing that Chinu was about to be dealt another blow, Tang Leen begged and asked her sister not to do this. The rhinoceros did not listen. The blow of her huge fist should have hit Chinu exactly in the face, but he deftly dodged the rhinoceros. The rhinoceros was stunned and confused. However, giving up was not in the rules of warriors, which Rhino warned Chinu about. The determination to deal with the scoundrel at any cost and avenge her sister was visible in her eyes. The dog sisters only begged Chinu to be careful and take care. They were barely breathing from excitement. A powerful hail of rhino blows fell on poor Chinu. Each blow was accompanied not only by shouts, "This is for your little sister," but also by growing energy points, which was in Chinu's favor. Chinu deftly dodged the blows, compared to Tang Leen. Rhinoceros moved slowly and clumsily, and Chinu noticed that she should have listened to the younger woman's advice and not interfere with him. "Don't underestimate me," Rhino roared, and swung it, hitting Chinu right on the head, but he only grinned. Chinu skillfully blocked her blow and reported that Rhino had fallen into a steel trap. Once, Chinu managed not only to block her blow, but also to intercept Rhino's fist. Now he was holding her tenaciously. The rhinoceros tried to wriggle out, she even succeeded, but her armor was falling apart from her last movements. She felt defenseless and unarmed. Rhino shyly covered her chest with her hands. She tried to jump out of the remnants of her armor. Chinu shamelessly stared at Rhino's chest. It seemed that he had never seen such large breasts in his life, and his gaze made Rhino feel no less hostile towards him. Suddenly, Tang Leen rushed past like an arrow. She, picking up her older sister, helped her hide. Chinu had no choice but to watch them. The trio of warrior girls ran away. As soon as Tang Leen turned around and threw over her shoulder, which Chinu remembered, she was furious, because she was clearly not used to losing, and Chinu only regretted that he had to let go of his 3 rivals. The dogs surrounded Chinu and were happy that he was alive and well, and Xiao Xiao even allowed herself a compliment. She praised Chinu and called him cool. It couldn't be said that Chinu was all that unharmed. There were cuts, wounds and abrasions on his body, but he was glad that everything was healing quite quickly. Chinu did not want to rest and catch his breath after the battle. On the contrary, he wanted to raise his place in the rankings, and for this he needed to attract more people and get more energy. The sisters enthusiastically agreed to Chinu's next adventure, and rushed forward in a friendly group. Together they reached the central zone, and the following picture was revealed to their gaze: a huge anthill with hundreds of moves and giant worms with which other participants fought. The worms looked as dangerous and disgusting as possible, 2 and 3 meter bodies that ended in a sting, a mouth full of sharp teeth, and paws with tenacious claws. Yes, these large-mouthed second-level worms even had paws. The dogs and Chinu watched this spectacle from behind the dense thickets. The girls timidly asked Chinu if they would go forward to these worms. Chinu replied that he saw no point in rushing. They were not couriers, and besides, there were a lot of people there now. It was unlikely that the boss would sit idly by. As soon as Chinu mentioned the word boss, he, or rather she, did not keep him waiting. The queen of the anthill entered the arena. Most of all, she looked like a huge spider with the body of a woman. The fighters fled to the sides. They were terrified, and the queen slowly and majestically swam to the center on all 6 of her spider legs. The elder dog sister found out that it was a level 5 monster, the evil bug queen, and froze in surprise. Chinu seemed to be just waiting for the queen. He smiled predatorily, anticipating a battle, and said, "Here she comes." Xiao Xiao tried to stop him and reason with him, warning him that they could not defeat her. In response to this, Chinu noted that he did not intend to act alone. The eldest sister did not really understand what Chinu meant, but for now they continued to sit in ambush among the dense bushes. Suddenly, Chinu jumped out of the bushes and shouted, turning to the other fighters. She incited them to move and go beat the queen. He promised a lot of energy for her and warned that there would be no other chance like this. It seems that the mention of energy had a magical effect on the other fighters. They froze in their tracks and thought. But within a second, a motley crowd of fighters attacked the queen. Everyone wanted to become a winner and snatch valuable balls of energy. The fighters did not act coherently at all. They fought both with the queen and among themselves. They argued about who found her first, who could handle it faster, and some even called on the others to shut up. It didn't look like the queen had suffered any damage. She seemed completely invulnerable, and it didn't look like the blows were hurting her. One warrior, apparently very confident in her abilities, decided to defeat the queen with her own hands. The brave warrior, like all those before her, failed, and Chinu, who carefully watched from the side, wondered why the queen did not react to the attacks. Chinu watched the progress of the battle and wondered if the boss queen really didn't have a single weak point. What was her vulnerability? Suddenly, a guess struck Chinu. It seems that he began to understand what was going on. He noticed a shining purple crystal on the queen's back. Perhaps this is the source of her strength and invulnerability. The guess could only be verified experimentally, so Chinu came up with a plan and began to outline it to his elder sister. Judging by the expression on her face, her sister did not like the plan. she found it dangerous and was not sure whether it was worth the risk, to which he objected that the gamble was worth the candle. Chinu was determined. Taking the spear, he walked towards the queen, and shouted, "Hey, stupid." He immediately received a blow to the head, but this did not stop him. With a spear in his hand, he jumped high, intending to hit the queen. Screaming, "Die!" he landed behind her and kicked her from behind, where her stinger was. When he hit the queen, Chinu realized that he was on the right path. At that moment Xiao Xiao was coming out. She had to attack the queen. Xiao Xiao used her signature ground strike to attack the queen, hundreds of boulders swirling around in a deadly dance. A flash, a blow, and now the spear pierces the queen's body. She was not so invulnerable. The queen let out a loud roar as the spear pierced her body, the blood of the defeated boss dripping from the tip of the spear. Chinu glanced at the boss's back again, where that same purple crystal was still located. He realized that this was it. The young man understood that victory could not be so easy, so he decided to deliver another series of powerful blows. Xiao Xiao, however, was almost celebrating her victory. She was glad that Chinu was once again right and was able to find the boss's weak point. However, suddenly the elder sister heard a heartbreaking scream behind her, and she turned around in fear. It turned out that the blow of the spear did not finish the queen, but only angered her, so Xiao Xiao tried to warn Chinu about the danger looming over him. "She is still alive, run, Chinu," Xiao Xiao shouted. She herself was already trying to hide from the queen. As if Chinu had not heard Xiao Xiao's calls to escape, he looked at the queen thoughtfully. His reverie cost him dearly. A second, and the powerful and toothy jaws of the queen closed on his neck. He jerked with all his might, trying to free himself from the death grip. It seems that the queen did not disdain to profit even from demons, or Chinu seemed especially tasty and appetizing to her. He floundered in the predatory mouth with all his might, but he had not yet managed to free himself. The queen did not loosen the grip of her jaws. She clearly intended to either devour Chinu whole or bite off his head. When suddenly a blow from a fist pierced the queen's flesh and body like paper. In just a split second, Chinu transformed and turned into a real demon. He was stronger than ever. Of course, this transformation took a damn cloud of energy, and Xiao Xiao ran to Chinu just to remind him of this. However, Chinu was as if in a fog, as if he was looking through Xiao Xiao and did not hear her voice addressed to him at all. Still as if in a fog and prostration, Chinu approached Xiao Xiao and pressed himself against her, clung to her. His head was exactly between her breasts, and this guy's behavior frightened and alarmed her. At this time, the teachers watching the competition had already called an ambulance to the arena. In their opinion, Chinu needed it immediately. Yuli, who had been watching Chinu all this time, was so annoyed, so worried and excited. Yuna put her hand on her shoulder and tried to calm her down. And at that second, Chinu watched as if in a dream as the system congratulated him on successfully absorbing the soul of a 5th-level demon. He received the strength and armor of a demon, as well as various demonic skills, for example, the skill of self-healing. "Damn me," Chinu swore, and opened his eyes, all bandaged. He was lying on a sterile white hospital bed, and a pretty young nurse was hovering next to him. Seeing that the patient opened his eyes and came to his senses, the nurse was sincerely happy, asked Chinu about his well-being and promised to bring a doctor. Is this really true? Chinu wondered. While the nurse went to call the doctor, he examined his hands and could not believe what had happened. The system, as if in response to his request, immediately gave him all the information. Here were the indicator points of his physique, spirit, the amount of accumulated energy in his new demonic superpowers. Chinu was jubilant. It seemed to him that he was good for nothing in this life, but it turned out that he still possessed the power of a demon. Sitting on the bed, Chinu wondered why he didn't wake up earlier. Did he really need to anger someone again in order to be healed? He was at a loss. He quickly got tired of guessing and thinking, because the best way to find out all this is to simply try out new skills. Chinu clenched his fist and tried to summon this demonic power within himself. He again wanted to feel this feeling of power. He felt his body filling with strength, gaining power, boiling with energy. Chinu was very pleased with these sensations. Suddenly, Chinu took a closer look at his hand. His attention was attracted by a strange glow on one of the fingers. It turned out that the finger was covered with either scales or armor. Chinu was not happy with the find. He roared, "What kind of crap is this?" He was dissatisfied, because this armor only covered one finger. Chinu was angry and complained that this was all beyond his strength. However, a notification from the system notifying him that the demonic armor had been upgraded calmed and consoled him. Even though 1000 energy points were spent on this, now the entire hand, and not just one finger, was covered with demonic armor. The sensation in the hand spread further, higher up the arm, and now the medical bandages were cracking and flying to the sides. The armor spreads over his hand, and now Chinu is already looking at his new hand with admiration. He likes the look of it in demonic armor much more than in bandages. The temptation to try out the new armor is very strong and overcomes Chinu, so he decides to test the power of the attack. At this time, the nurse is talking with the doctor. She reports that the guy who defeated the Pest Queen has finally woken up, to which the doctor is sadly forced to admit that Chinu will not be able to return to the competition. The doctor went to Chinu's room. He intends to conduct an examination. The nurse accompanies the doctor. This is the same employee who was in the ward when Chinu came to. She is very attractive in her white short robe. The doctor examines Chinu and states that he is in good condition. In just a day most of the internal injuries have returned to normal, and at this time the nurse stands, carefully bending over the patient. Well, you can be discharged in a month, the doctor concludes, but Chinu argues with him. He cannot wait a month, he needs to participate in the competition the very next day. The doctor objects that this is all nonsense, you shouldn't take any competitions so seriously at such a young age, and Chinu's bones are all crushed. Chinu is not ready to give up and give in to the doctor so easily. It seems to him that perhaps there is one way to get out of this situation. That's right, self-healing flesh and blood, his new demonic super skill, but it requires a lot of energy points, but it seems Chinu already knows how to get them. An unsuspecting nurse stands nearby and carefully, with careful movements, bandages Chinu's hand. Chinu already has a cunning plan in his head, however, before putting it into action, he apologizes to the nurse in advance. Reaching out his hand, Chinu grabs the nurse's juicy and soft buttock, barely covered by a short robe. The calculation worked. The nurse is furious at the guy's impudent behavior. She indignantly asks what he's doing. Chinu makes excuses and apologizes, saying that I was just warming up my arm, it went numb after the bandages. Turning sharply on her heels, the nurse leaves the room and throws out a phrase after him that he will call a nurse to help Chinu. Chinu feels annoyed, because from his aunt he would have received much more energy points. Thinking sadly, Chinu comes to the conclusion that this way, it apparently doesn't work. Well, you'll have to take it in numbers, the corridor is just full of young and pretty nurses. A whoosh, like a hurricane, swept through the hospital corridor, and each of the nurses managed to feel its touch. It was Chinu who swept along the corridor like a hurricane and managed to get under each of the nurses' skirts and slap them on the butt. The medical workers are embarrassed and angry, they have never encountered such impudent people before, and Chinu at this moment is counting new energy points. However, Chinu not only calculates the number of energy points, he keeps statistics on what colors and sizes the nurses' panties were. Oh, these guys. Cool. Other patients who crowd in the corridor whistle in admiration. However, Chinu does not stop there. Next on the list of his impudent deeds is pulling off clothes from patients, who are naked, funny and angry, providing Chinu with additional energy points. A few days later, a huge stadium, the stands filled with tens of thousands of spectators, in the center of the stadium arenas for one-on-one sparring. Among the spectators in the stands and Yuli and her mother, the girl laments that Chinu, although he defeated the queen, will now not be able to take part in the final competition. Suddenly, Yuli hears a voice from the speakers. He invites Chinu from the 3rd school to go up to the arena to meet his opponent, Ren Jianyan from the 7th school. Yuli can't believe her ears. Did she really just hear Chinu's name? She asks her mother how he could end up here. And here is Chinu himself, in a snow-white suit and with a bandaged head. He proudly strides around the stadium. His gait is very confident, his fists are clenched. Yuli recognizes him unmistakably and at first sight, she screams indignantly, "Stupid, what are you up to? Have you gone crazy?" The competition official brings Chinu to his opponent. Chinu whistles cheerfully and doesn't seem to be worried at all. The enemy is alarmed, he hopes that Chinu came to fight honestly and not to scare him. Still continuing to whistle, Chinu approaches the enemy. It seemed that he was just going for a walk, and did not show up for the competition. The enemy is wondering what he intends to do. The enemy was about to take his sword out of its sheath, but Chinu extended his hand to introduce himself and politely greeted the enemy. The opponent reminds himself that he must observe basic rules of etiquette and bows in return, thereby showing respect for Chinu. But Chinu is no longer up to the ceremony. His hand quickly flies up and strikes, and through his bandaged head one eye glows with a red devilish light. Chinu unleashes the full force of his blow on his opponent. The power of his blows cracks and splits the ground. One weaker blow would have been enough for the enemy. The poor fellow lies knocked out, with his face buried in the ground, and makes no attempt to get up. The competition official announces Chinu as the winner of this fight. It was a very easy fight. Yuli in the stands is very embarrassed. Covering her face with her palms, she insists that she does not know Chinu. Chinu wins the next few matches without any problems thanks to his unprecedented adaptability. He dealt with his opponents one after another. Chinu scatters his opponents like kittens. It seems as if a world-class boxer came to school to beat up 5th graders. The defeated participants are humiliated and angry. They have not faced such power before and cannot resist the demon. Everything goes swimmingly until the host announces Chinu's new opponent, and it turns out to be Tang Leen, the hooded girl who moves faster than the wind. Tang Leen is determined to take revenge on Chinu, and she is even glad that he was her opponent in the arena. Clearly, Tang Leen has learned from her previous battle with Chinu and promises him that she will not fall for his tricks again. Chinu seems amused by this and laughs and teases Tang Leen. With his palm out and a battle cry, Chinu flies forward towards Tang Leen and prepares to strike the first blow. So, this promises to be a grand showdown. The battle between Chinu and Tang Leen has the audience holding their breath. Tang Leen has already taken out her twin blades and is waving them in the air. Where is Chinu's weapon, she wonders. Chinu tells her that his body serves as a weapon for him. He doesn't need anything else. Chatterbox, Tang Leen reproaches him. Chinu makes an excuse that he is from a poor family and cannot afford armor. In response to this, Tang Leen says that he will not treat him like that. Tang Leen looks confused. The presenter does not understand what is wrong and is waiting for an explanation. The opponent explains that she has no clothes under her armor, so she will accept defeat. Chinu dissuades her. He tries to convince her that no one is looking, everything is fine, and if necessary, he himself is ready to undress. It seems that this was just a trick on Tang Lien's part. She squints her eyes slyly and says that in that case, the battle begins. She attacks Chinu with poisonous green pulses. They look like acid and behave accordingly, burning through the skin. Tang Leen quickly attacks Chinu from all sides. He is once again amazed at Tang Lien's speed and understands that if he had met her in the arena earlier, he would definitely have come to an end. However, Tang Leen is not so easy either. She thought that, having put on the armor, she could easily deal with him, but that was not the case. There is no way Tang Leen can lose and discredit the honor of the family, so she activates her third-level combat equipment, the electric mantis knife. Explosive attacks. Damn, I didn't expect this. Chinu curses and tries to defend himself. Nothing helps. The electric knives have already reached Chinu and are inflicting painful blows on him. Chinu understands that he must take a risk, otherwise after another such attack he will be left without an arm. He remembers how he managed to outwit her last time and decides to take a risk this time too. Tang Leen is sure that her opponent will not hold out much longer, just one more second and he will give up, because his strength is running out. Once, and the mantis's sharp electric knives enter Chinu's body, he coughs up blood. The opponent smiles jubilantly. She says that she won. She is really sure of it. However, Chinu objects to her. Victory is mine, he says, and this despite the fact that the blades of the mantis electric knives sit tightly in his body. Tang Leen is beside herself with surprise. In a state of shock, she doesn't even have time to notice how Chinu's fist flies straight into her chest. Chinu knocks Tang Leen back with a crushing blow, her armor shattering from the impact. The guy admits that Tang Leen is exceptionally talented, fast, persistent and passionate, while his rival has caused him a lot of trouble. The young demon doubts that her strength is equal to the third level. She probably exceeds it, but here Tang Leen lies on the ground, defeated, without armor, and unconscious. It was not easy to defeat her, but I succeeded, concludes Chinu. taking out the deadly blades of the mantis from his chest. Self-healing works in an amazing way, deep wounds and cuts heal right before your eyes. The blades of the electric knives clang to the ground one after another. It seems that the battle is over, when suddenly Chinu hears a scream. It turns out to be Xiao Xiao, and it looks like she is hardly in a better condition than Tang Leen. It seems that the elder sister has just lost her fight. 32 fractures all over her body. Chinu quickly counts, picking up the girl in his arms. He thinks who could do this to her, because Xiao Xiao is a very strong fighter. Xiao Xiao barely opens her swollen and red eyes and tries to warn Chinu about something. She asks him to be careful. Space martial arts, he hears, are the very martial arts that are recognized as the most difficult to study in Western culture. The host's voice announces the winner. It is a certain Wanga, and he wonders what this Wanga is doing here. Chinu, with Xiao Xiao in his arms, tries to get up, but someone's strong blow knocks him down. As if knocked down, the guys fall to the ground. The guy tries to protect the girl from new injuries, and at the same time tries to examine the offender. "Hey, idiot," Chinu addresses him rudely. "Do you at least know the rules of behavior?" he asks. "Calm down, I just said hello." Wanga smiles innocently and waves his hand in greeting. "Don't worry, this is just a welcoming ceremony," Wanga convinces, and Chinu at this moment is trying to convince himself not to pay attention to this idiot. Apparently, Wanga is not in the mood to fight with Chinu. He turns his back on him and promises to settle all issues by the hour of the next meeting. Chinu understands that Wanga came for him and Xiao Xiao suffered in vain. At this time the ambulance workers are already running towards her. The doctors put Xiao Xiao on a stretcher and take her away. Chinu manages to thank her for everything she did for him and adds that now she can rest with peace of mind. Meanwhile, an exciting moment is coming in the arena. After all these intense days of battles, the names of the participants who are in the top 6 will finally be known. The stands are holding their breath. This year's champion is about to be named. The host encourages the participants to look at the tournament tables to find out the name of their opponent. Chinu will have to fight Wanga, and he understands that he must prepare. And now the time for the fight has come. Wanga has long since taken his place in the arena and is wondering where Chinu has gone. The match is about to begin. Chinu has a whole female support group. Here are Yuli, Yuna, and Teacher Zhao, and Xiao Xiao. They are wildly cheering and greet Chinu, who is just arriving at the arena. This time Chinu is wearing a strange suit with jars and bottles hanging from it. One can only guess what is inside them. Everyone is surprised that he put it on himself, but the guy himself is in a great mood and waves his hand in greeting. Chinu's funny costume amuses the stands, but the guy doesn't pay attention to it. The enemy mocks and asks if Chinu is ready to admit defeat, in response to which the guy boldly remarks that his plans do not concern Wanga. The battle begins. The host announces, Wanga is eager to find out what a representative of the Horned family, the demons, is capable of in battle. The Horned family, Chinu laughs. "Did you see yourself in the mirror?" he asks Wanga, since he himself wears a pair of horns on his head. Wanga throws the first blow, but it lands on Chinu's demonic armor, and it deflects the blow. Demonic armor, an excellent ability, praises Wanga's opponent, and adds that it is indeed not easy to obtain such a skill. "But still, this will not help you, your armor will not save you," Wanga shouts and launches a huge golden sword towards Chinu. Chinu tries to parry the blow of the sword, as if he lives his own life separately from his owner. "Wanga, you lost," Wanga shouts jubilantly, his eyes glowing red in the ecstasy of battle. The golden sword circles around Chinu, striking him blow after blow. The guy tries to fight back, but he is very strong. Another sword strike cuts Chinu along the body, from the waist to the head, looking very dramatic. "Well, chicken, your end has come," Wanga giggles. Victory is in his pocket. Wanga looks relaxed and confident. Chinu urged Wanga not to jump to conclusions. He was not going to give up so easily. And the next minute he asked Wanga to look up. It seemed that the enemy was in for a surprise. Hundreds of capsules that were previously attached to Chinu's suit were now falling from a height directly towards Wanga. They exploded in the air and turned out to be filled with pungent-smelling seasonings. Wanga was furious. This was extremely humiliating for him, and Chinu was jubilant. "This is what you need." It seems that Chinu managed to seriously irritate Wanga, the enemy, taking a breath and clearing his throat, said that in fact, he originally intended to let Chinu go, but he enraged him. Therefore, you yourself chose death for yourself. Wanga finished his speech. He took on a demonic appearance, and black smoke swirled around him. Another moment, and thick smoke filled the entire arena. Chinu felt disoriented and blind as a kitten. Xiao Xiao, who, after the first aid provided, was now watching the competition from the stands with Yuli, told her that this was a trap. Wanga had previously used this technique against her to deprive her of the ability to control space. Behind the clouds of smoke, meanwhile, something terrible was happening in the arena. Wanga was reincarnated into a huge, powerful demon. Chinu thought, a coward. Wanga wanted too easy and bloodless victory in the fight. The reincarnation was completed. A huge demon stood in front of Chinu, at least 5 meters in height. He called on Chinu to shudder in horror and promised that from now on he will do what the demon says. The demon continued to utter his threats, but Chinu decided to interrupt this flow of eloquence with a powerful blow directly to the demon's face. Chinu decided to tease the demon and asked what kind of sight he had. After all, he transformed into a horse, and Wanga was already muttering his death threats. The demon opened its mouth wide, showing rows of razor-sharp teeth. Its eyes glowed with fire, and it roared, "Now I will finish you off." A vortex of darkness swirled around Chinu, but did not consume him. He clenched his fists and remained steadfast. Teacher Zhao, watching the battle, asked where this student, whose abilities were so unique, came from. Yuna agreed with Zhao, but added that in any case, Wanga's abilities greatly exceeded Chinu's. Chinu tried to navigate the darkness, haze and fog surrounding him. His opponent was again not visible. Suddenly, the cutting blow of the red blade hit Chinu right on the back. He cried out in pain and surprise. Chinu tried to avoid the next blow. He maneuvered and quickly moved around the arena. The demon was furious that his prey was eluding him. He turned to Chinu. "Hey, you stupid horned devil, think you are so special? Are you also from the royal clan?" Wanga suddenly asked. A sudden guess came to him. Naturally, Wanga replied. At this moment Chinu was trying to land at least one blow on the demon. Demon Wanga proudly declared that he was not only a member of the royal clan, but also an executioner. Executioner Wanga objected that the demon clan did not have such defensive skills. It was simply impossible, which meant that Chinu was hiding his true essence, and demanded Chinu to confess who he was. "Your dad," Chinu replied. With these words, he punched Wanga in the stomach with a powerful blow of his fist. Wanga only coughed from the blow, but did not even fall, but the hostility, and with it the energy points, grew like mushrooms after rain. "Just think, the executioner of the royal clan of demons, also for me," thought Chinu. He seemed to relax and get comfortable. He felt ready to fight even with Voldemort himself. Wanga stood and looked at Chinu from a height of 5 meters. He thought that no matter who this one-horned guy was, Wanga's skills could not be resisted. The enemy raised his huge sword above his head to deal a decisive blow to Chinu and thought that he would still be the winner, and this one-horned demon would die in a second. Spectators in the stands wondered where the sound suddenly disappeared. This made it difficult to closely follow the progress of the battle. Suddenly, what was happening in the arena turned into one continuous black funnel. It seemed to have swallowed up the fighters. Nothing could be seen. Yuli called out to Chinu in fear. When the fog cleared, an amazing picture was revealed to the eyes of the spectators. Chinu, armed with a huge sword, Wanga, cut off one of his horns. Wanga was defeated and was on his knees. Xiao Xiao and Teacher Zhao were the first to react, covering their mouths with their hand in surprise. They couldn't believe their eyes. Chinu won. No one expected such a turn of events. Even Chinu himself seemed shocked by his victory. The moments of the battle stood before Chinu's eyes, and the demon Wanga swung his sword and shouted, "Die, you fucking demon." Here is Chinu blocking the blow of a giant sword with just his palm, sparks and flames flying around. The demon roars that this is impossible, no one can resist him. His eyes glow with devilish fire. Here Chinu hits with a forbidden technique right in the most sensitive place, and the demon drops the sword from his hands in pain and shock. Chinu grabs the giant demon sword, arms himself with it, and the demon sits on the ground and groans. He cannot understand how Chinu guessed where he was hiding. "What an idiot you are," Chinu mocks. do you really think that I brought seasonings with me just for the sake of it, just in case? You're just a lame, hornless demon, Chinu says, and raises his sword again to strike. The demon admits that horns are very important to him, it is the pride of their clan, and losing a horn is considered a huge humiliation. The enraged and defeated demon tears and rushes, the earth trembles from his howl, and his hatred and anger give Chinu energy points. With the memories of the battle over, we return to the present. Before us is the gorgeous blonde Aquila, the head of the Sheep Knights and an 8th level warrior. All this time she was watching the battle between Wanga and Chinu, and now she decided to intervene. She asks to take a step back, and promises to take over everything else. Simple as shelling pears, Chinu agrees, and raises the sword over the demon's head. Suddenly, a purple funnel spins up in the arena, the purple abyss swirls and swallows Chinu, knocking the sword out of his hands. However, Chinu was not the only one who felt this, and it seems that the demon's eyes darkened, wondering who turned off the light. If someone had previously thought that the 5-meter demon Wangzhe was a grandiose creature, now before the eyes of the heroes there appeared a demon 10 times larger and more terrible, his weapon inspired horror by its size alone. The only one who did not freeze in horror was Aquila. On the contrary, she radiated belligerence and a willingness to stand to the last. By this time, Aquila had already been holding Chinu in her arms for a good 10 minutes, and only now a sluggish thought about a certain Wu Chao flashed through his mind. Aquila was starting to get impatient, throwing Chinu to the ground. She asks if she didn't order them to retreat. My God, this is a level 9 executioner demon, she thought. The demon was truly the largest one she had ever seen. Obviously, the giant demon was Wangzhe's father. Because he bleated and apologized for disturbing the peace, he justified himself by saying that he just wanted to get into this world and kill everyone here. I didn't think that this misunderstanding could defeat me, Wangzhe said, angrily pointing his finger at Chinu, in response to which Aquila flew up in anger, and Chinu replied that the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. The son of the horned demon, yeah, the giant demon peered closely at Chinu. Wangzhe was screaming and screaming that if Chinu angered his father, he would instantly turn into a corpse. The demon continued to persuade Chinu to submit. For this the demon promised him the priceless right to surrender voluntarily. From such a proposal Chinu froze in confusion. The spectators in the stands were also waiting for Chinu's decision, and Yuli and Yuna were especially worried, of course. Yuna was beside herself with tension, she could not utter a word to support her daughter. Teacher Zhao also froze in a tense position on the very edge of her seat. Wangzhe raged, he was beside himself with rage. Did his father invite this bastard? How is this possible if he did not approve of Wangzhe himself? Aquila pointed her finger at the demon and playfully turned to Chinu, saying that they were trying to lure him away. What would he say to that? In response, Chinu just chuckled and said that things wouldn't work that way. It seems that this is exactly the reaction that Aquila was counting on. With a triumphant look, she turned to the demon and asked him if he had heard Chinu's answer. If the demon heard the answer, he did not react in any way, so Aquila decided to push him into action and called on him to get out of their world back into his own. They say, the demon is too ugly and rapes the eyes of those around him with just his appearance. In support of her words she swung with a sword. Aquila dealt a crushing blow to the demon with her sword. Everything around burned with fire, the demon was completely engulfed in flames. However, it didn't look like the demon was hurt in any way. Aquila began to lose patience and passionately shouted at you, and threatened to immediately tear him to smithereens. The demon behaved proudly and smugly. It did not seem that he was seriously hurt by Aquila's words and blows. Throwing his giant sword over his shoulder, he told Aquila that she would soon regret her behavior. Watching how Wangzhe was furious with powerlessness and anger, Chinu noted that his hatred could be compared in strength to his aunt's. The spectacle that took place in the arena completely captivated the audience. The world of competitions had not seen such intense passions, and such strong opponents for a long time. There was a flash, and a huge demon disappeared into the air. Yuli apparently had sympathy and warm feelings for Chinu, because she asked her mother to treat him better when he returned to their home. Despite the fact that he was not the most obedient teenager, Yuna hoped that he could change. Chinu turned to the competition official and asked him not to be a fool and to quickly declare him the winner. Aquila, playing with her sword, noted that there was no need to worry about this, because even if a demon of the 9th level managed to get into the arena, it means that this place is not at all safe, and we need to get away from here as quickly as possible. Chinu froze in amazement. He didn't want all these difficulties at all, he just wanted to feel like the winner of the competition. However, apparently, his dreams were not destined to come true. Buses with armed people, apparently the security service, arrived at the arena. Chinu thought for a moment and gloomily concluded that, apparently, the organizers of the competition simply did not want him, the demon, to win, so they took the easy way out and simply stopped them. The dog sisters approached Chinu. It seems they were also getting ready to leave, and the guy decided to clarify whether they were also already leaving. That's right, a car was already waiting for the sisters, but Xiao Xiao, as the eldest, decided to express her gratitude to Chinu on behalf of all the sisters. She said that she really appreciated everything that Chinu did for them, and believed that in her heart he's good no matter what. Chinu was not used to sincere thanks and asked not to treat him as if they wanted to sell him something, and in general, he had had enough of thanks. Xiao Xiao hesitated for a moment, and then, as if embarrassed, said that this is not all, in fact, there is still something left. With these words, she rushed forward and hugged Chinu tightly in her arms. It seemed that she herself was embarrassed by her such a vivid display of feelings. Chinu was no less embarrassed. Finally, Xiao Xiao opened her arms and released the guy. It was time to hit the road. Getting on the bus, she nodded to him goodbye, saying, "I'll see you again." The bus closed the doors and rolled away. Chinu looked after him. He would have missed Xiao Xiao, but no, his thoughts were only about how he had literally just touched her. The next bus arrived to pick up Chinu. He reluctantly climbed up and plopped down on his seat. This was not how he imagined the end of the competition. Chinu took a place at the window. He sat down, resting his head on his fist with a bored look, and began to think extensively. The flow of his thoughts was suddenly interrupted by the voice of a demon that sounded in his head. It seemed that he was very close and whispered in Chinu's ear that he would regret this. Chinu responded sluggishly. Had he really prepared a trap for him? The demon did not answer, but at that very second the bus shook with terrifying force. It seemed that it was about to overturn. Chinu's fellow passengers screamed in horror. Chinu was not one to be timid, so he decided to look out of the window and see what was the reason for such an uncomfortable ride. The guy stuck his head out of the bus window and looked back. A fiery demonic fox was chasing after the bus, suspiciously reminiscent of the competition host, only 100 times larger and angrier. Fortunately, there were security personnel on the bus. They turned to the driver and asked him to take the children to the nearest safe place, to a shelter, as quickly as possible. Jax, that was the driver's name, nodded in agreement and curtly replied that he understood. The order would be carried out. At the same moment, the driver's voice sounded from the bus's speakers. He called on everyone to prepare for battle, and although he sent a distress signal through the communicator, he had to hold out until help arrived. The fiery demonic fox did not even think of stopping his deadly pursuit. He chased the bus like a defenseless rabbit. Finally, the bus arrived at the nearest shelter. The driver urged everyone to remain calm and not panic. The security officer moved along the bus aisle and carefully peered into the faces of all the passengers. Finally, it was allowed to leave the bus. Chinu was one of the last to get off, and a whole crowd of passengers had already gathered around. The driver asked the security members not to go far and send someone for help, because if the enemy overtakes them, even the steel gate of the shelter will not save them. Suddenly, a hand blocked the security officer's path. It was Chinu, and he said that he needed to immediately settle one small issue with the driver. The driver, however, was not in the mood for dialogue. He looked at Chinu gloomily and said that all personal issues will be resolved after the current problems are resolved. The security officer tried to push Chinu aside, but he remained motionless like a rock, and the officer was surprised at his strength. Chinu politely tried to explain to the security officer that his question was an order of magnitude more important than all others. The driver decided to intervene. He looked gloomily and indifferently into Chinu's eyes and asked tiredly, "Boy, what do you want?" Without wasting time on long conversations, Chinu takes and hits the driver right in the chest. He immediately starts coughing up blood, and Chinu asks why he, the teacher, hates him so much. The driver barely wheezes in amazement, which in response to Chinu repeats his question. he is interested in why the person he is meeting for the first time hates him so much, and the growing numbers of hostility are further confirmation of this. However, the driver's bloody interrogation is interrupted by security officers who point their guns at Chinu and demand that the driver be released immediately or they will shoot. Suddenly, Chinu and the driver are enveloped in purple clots of energy, most of all they resemble a viscous purple fog. The security personnel almost drop their weapons out of fear. They have never encountered anything like this before, but Chinu, on the contrary, looks very calm. It's strange, but the driver is nowhere to be seen, but instead of him, a huge monster with tentacles and a toothy mouth is visible. Is it all a mirage? So it is, a mirage, Chinu concludes. The monster only took on the guise of a driver. In fact, it is unclear at what point he took on this appearance, but now he is finished. One of the security personnel thanks Chinu. After all, he was the one who recognized and neutralized the enemy. There is no need for thanks, the guy modestly replies, but the matter is not over yet. Chinu stretches out his hand and accumulates a stream of purple energy, apparently devouring the strength of the fallen enemy. The young man crouches near the body of the fallen demon, but neither he nor his remains are there. Only 3 black demonic clots swirl at his feet. One of the security personnel wants to know how Chinu managed to recognize the mirage and expose the enemy. Chinu replies that it was obvious. The system kept opening windows of hatred for him. Of all those who were there, only this supposed driver could hate Chinu. The security officer was delighted. Suddenly, Chinu and the security officer hear a piercing scream from the next room, the kind of screaming that can only be done out of terror. Chinu and the security officer instantly rush to the source of the sound. Chinu suddenly realizes that the driver had originally planned to bring them here, which means there is probably a trap and an ambush here. A terrifying sight opens before their eyes. A huge fire-breathing 6-eyed dragon is devouring people. Several have already been killed at its paws, and the lifeless and headless body of another victim is hanging from its mouth. I wonder if this is a dragon, Chinu curses. As if to confirm his words, the dragon spews out a cloud of flame towards the guy. The dragon is like a burning gas station inside. It emits flames every second, and obviously chose Chinu as its next victim. The dragon's flame literally burns through the walls and turns the thick walls of the shelter into bricks. Chinu is dumbfounded from shock. The security officer asks Chinu to be careful, and the guy himself understands that this opponent is extremely dangerous. The dragon is taller than a 5-story building, and, as if the fiery breath was not enough, the mouth is littered with hundreds of sharp teeth. This is a colossus, Chinu thinks, and sees how the dragon is experiencing overwhelming hostility towards him. The dragon intends to fry Chinu's butt. Chinu is trying as hard as he can to get away from the dragon and not turn into a freshly grilled kebab. Fortunately, the dragon is not as agile and fast as Tang Leen. It seems that Chinu is planning another trick. A devilish light is burning in his eyes. While running away, Chinu abruptly changes his trajectory, and the same school bus in which the students arrived here ends up on the dragon's path. The huge carcass of the dragon does not have time to change direction, and the fire-breathing creature is slammed into the bus at full speed. Chinu is extremely pleased with how he once again saved not only his own skin, but also the other students, who are filled with gratitude and vying with each other in praising Chinu. The dragon's muzzle is firmly stuck in the skin of the bus. The monster is enraged and feels extreme hostility towards Chinu, which he does only once. The energy points are not lying on the road. Chinu is almost bursting with pride. He is sure that the devil himself is helping him with his own hands. Everyone is shocked how an ordinary guy, in fact, still a child, can do this. The dragon doesn't look half as menacing as before. With its face stuck in the bus and unable to free itself, Chinu promises that he is already walking after his soul. Chinu is anticipating reprisals. His heart froze in anticipation even at the moment when he first came face to face with the dragon. Approaching the trapped dragon, Chinu literally disembowels it. Scales, claws and blood fly to the sides. The guy is deeply passionate about his work. The security personnel watch Chinu in amazement. They are in a state of extreme shock. One of them finally says that he thought Chinu would feel sorry for the female, and it was exactly the female dragon. Suddenly, the radio of one of the security officers explodes with a call for help. A convoy is attacked in the 4th block of the City of Dogs. immediate reinforcements are required. Chinu immediately jumps up, he is afraid that a threat is looming over the dog sisters. The security officer is trying to find out what happened there, and Chinu is extremely interested in the security radio. The officer explains to him that, indeed, help is needed in the dog city. Chinu instantly snatches the walkie-talkie from the employee's hands and rushes away. He promises to look into everything. The employee shouts after him that it was he who should have protected his classmates and not let Chinu go into danger. At this time, in the fourth block, two charming demonesses are discussing among themselves why the boss does not allow them to kill anyone, even those who imprisoned him underground, and what then is the point of their being here. One of the demons reports that she heard that the whole point is that they have someone of their kind hostage, which means that they themselves need a hostage for negotiations. And who is that hostage? One demoness wonders. Is it really the same guy who is able to improve his skills and control other demons? In response to this, another advises to talk less about such things on the street. One demoness dreamily indulges in thoughts about how gladly she would now eat a couple of orcs. At that moment Chinu, like a bulldozer, crashes into the lady at full speed, and again, magically, his head ends up between the lush female breasts. Chinu literally knocks the demoness off her feet, and after catching his breath, asks if she is okay. The girl clearly liked the young demon. She looks at him dreamily and thinks how handsome he is. At this time her sister asks what squad he is from and how he got here. Chinu replies that he is from the Demon King's convoy. His Majesty personally sent him here. To prove his words he shows dragon scales, asks what is going on here after all. The demoness, who had previously found herself in Chinu's arms, frees herself and says that it's every man for himself. The main thing is that he was not hurt, and the other asks where Chinu got his dragon scales and why there is blood on it. Suddenly, the demoness wraps her arms around Chinu's neck and invites him to join them. They are just moving towards another squad and can take him with them. The girl silently admires the guy's strong pectoral muscles. Chinu and his new friend leave almost arm in arm. The girl says that from now on he can call her little sister. Chinu laughs in response and calls her cute. At this time another demoness shouts after them and asks them to wait for her. The trio wanders through the streets of the fourth block. They look as if after a bombing, something is smoldering and burning around them every now and then, and Chinu thinks to himself that he is about to find his sisters. He seems to feel them. At this time, the sisters are locked behind bars in a cell on the territory of a huge warehouse. They are scared, but Xiao Xiao, as the eldest, tries to calm them down, cheer them up and assure them that they will definitely be saved. Suddenly a familiar voice cuts through the space. He asks if the puppies are here. Xiao Xiao instantly recognizes Chinu's voice and rejoices. Chinu approaches the camera, grabs the bars with his hands. His eyes meet Xiao Xiao's eyes. They are both very happy to meet. Suddenly Xiao Xiao notices Chinu's companion behind and asks if he is really in league with these she-devils. The she-devil laughs and notices that Chinu has obviously found his girlfriend. Xiao Xiao is embarrassed and even a little angry. She is curious about what Chinu was telling his new friend. Suddenly, Chinu reaches through the bars and covers Xiao Xiao's mouth with his hand and tells her, "Stop talking, it's not about me," and adds that he is not the one who is willing to help them. The she-devil smiles triumphantly and concludes that Xiao Xiao and her sisters are just bitches and are no match for Chinu. Even a blind man can see that. Chinu thanks the devil and hugs her around the waist, and she happily replies that this is all nothing. Shouldn't we rely on each other? Xiao Xiao is simply humiliated and crushed. She watches Chinu hugging the devil and walking away, and Chinu's offensive words about bitches are still ringing in her ears. However, Chinu is not so simple at all. It turns out that he managed to quietly give Xiao Xiao an earphone, and she wonders if he really snuck in there just for them. The older dog sister puts the earpiece to her ear and hears voices coming from there. The agents are talking among themselves about which squad is going where. The commander is giving commands, when suddenly they realize that an extra channel is active, which means someone is listening to them. Xiao Xiao reports that Chinu managed to hide her identity and smuggled an earpiece to them, and now she, as a representative of the high school team, is in touch and therefore safe. Help will be coming soon. The city of dogs is engulfed in flames. The flames are raging and consuming buildings, and at this time demons, including a level 6 bone demon and a level 4 warden demon, are holding their ominous meeting. The Bone Demon broadcasts that he decided not to wait for the opponents to go on the offensive. Instead, a detachment is being created to return that demon here, and calls for joining him. In the crowd that listens to the demon, Chinu is also standing. He thinks that if he allows the demons to screw up at the last minute, then he can certainly earn a lot of energy points from this. Without thinking twice, Chinu raises his hand as a sign of readiness to join the squad of demons. He sees that one demon, a level 3 death scythe, is also joining the squad. There are surprisingly many people who want to join, so the fire demon of level 4 also raises his hand, and after him the armored demon of level 4 is ready to go on a search. The last one called to search for the demon is a level 4 bone demon, and now the search team consists of 4 people, or more correctly, demons. The organizer of the search party is very pleased. He congratulates the volunteers for making the right choice, and encourages the others to welcome the new heroes. Chinu, as part of a group of 4 demons, sets out to search. His partners look very menacing and purposeful. The leader of the search party, a level 6 bone demon, promises a generous reward to everyone who contributes to the return of the demon. Chinu notices that there are interconnected dots everywhere. Well, the leader gives the last instructions and instructions. Hit the road. Here, he shows, there are a huge number of coordinates, each of which is associated with a demon. None of them will take you directly to him, but in any case, the choice of coordinates remains after you. The leader of the search insistently asks for the demon to be returned before the enemy does anything, and wishes good luck to the participants in the search. Meanwhile, while Chinu and the search team listened to the leader's instructions, the placement of the orcs was completed. Only Chinu, accompanied by demons, managed to set out in search when he discovered a patrol of 4, and they discovered him and decided that he was a member of the convoy. The patrol commander immediately gives the order to catch them, and now the guards have their weapons ready. Chinu is looking forward to an interesting battle. He is already hungry for fights and worthy opponents. The demons from Chinu's squad also felt the excitement of the upcoming battle. They were sure that they could not fall face first into the ground and fall into slavery. The demons would never become slaves. The patrol of guards cheerfully rushed forward with guns at the ready. They outnumbered Chinu's squad. The commander of the guards encouraged his fighters. He called on them to immediately and with all their hearts attack these demons. Chinu thought that only idiots would sign up for this and ran away. He realized that he needed to get out of there as quickly as possible. The guy rushed along the corridor and suddenly saw a slightly open door. He went into the room and hid. He heard calls coming from the corridor to find him, and he understood that if he revealed himself, then this time he would not escape, and there was no one who could help him. Suddenly, out of the corner of his ear, Chinu heard a sound. He turned around and at first saw only one hand in a long puffy sleeve. It turned out that the hand belonged to a young girl. She seemed to be crucified, tied, and her mouth was gagged. In a word, she was a captive. Seeing Chinu, the captive's eyes widened in fear, but she couldn't say anything, so Chinu couldn't think of anything better than to say that he was already leaving, and advised the girl not to panic. The girl was making loud, inarticulate moans. It was impossible to make out anything, but Chinu came even closer and asked in a mocking tone if she wanted to tell him something. The captive clearly intended to say something, but Chinu rudely snapped that he did not like to listen and did not intend to, and snapped his fingers on the girl's forehead. "I prefer silence," the guy said, but the girl didn't hear him anymore. The blow, although weak, was enough for her to lose consciousness. Chinu heard footsteps and screams in the corridor. The guy cursed as he did not want to be discovered, and the voices outside the door were about to check if their prisoner was alive. The young demon wanted to hide, but there was nowhere to hide. The room was devoid of anything except the captive herself. The patrol entered the room and looked around. It seemed they were satisfied, because the captive was still alive and, most importantly, in place. The patrol members examined how tightly the girl was tied. One of them noted that the best way is to ask the knights to look after her, but on the other hand, the captive has not yet escaped, but the knights are still highly respected in society. Chinu, who at that time by some miracle managed to cling to the ceiling, already regretted that he got involved in this story. It was clear that he would not earn energy points here, but Aunt Yuna could very well finish him off. The guy was clutching the ceiling with his last strength. His fingers were tired and slipping. He understood that he couldn't hold out like this for long, but he couldn't give himself away. The guards at that time were discussing that the head of the city and his retinue had long disliked them, so they should ask for help. They didn't, and the patrol was preoccupied with how to regain their former respect. One of the guards noted that the head of the city already changes every 3 years, so the reputation of the troops is the least of his worries. What's the point of bothering him with this if knights are a hereditary profession? Another guard objected that in any case he would trust the knights more, and not civilian. Chinu felt that he was about to fall right on the heads of the guards. He prayed that they would quickly get out of the room. Things were bad. Finally, the patrol left the room, and just in time, because as soon as they walked out the door, Chinu loudly fell to the floor. Fortunately, the patrol did not notice this. They were talking about how it would not hurt to check the next room as well. The guy landed on the floor and took a breath. Playing Spider-Man was clearly new to him. Then he remembered that he was clearly not alone in the room. The captive had managed to come to her senses and was again moaning loudly, obviously calling for help. Chinu approached the girl and, without any hesitation, put his hand on her chest. The prisoner couldn't say anything, but the expression in her eyes could tell a lot. The girl continued to make plaintive, unintelligible sounds, and this completely angered Chinu. He rudely shouted at her and told her to shut up. After all, she really didn't understand human language. Chinu immediately came to his senses. He realized that he had shouted too loudly and could have given himself away. What an idiot, he lamented and scolded himself. As it turned out, he was not worried in vain. The guards kicked in the door with a loud knock and wondered who was making the noise. A curious picture opened up to the guard's eyes. Chinu was sitting in the center of the room, his hand still resting on the captive's chest. The young man didn't even waste time on explanations and excuses. He instantly found himself behind the patrolman, and asked them for forgiveness in advance. And then everything was in the best traditions of Chinu's fights. He grabbed the guards by the backs of their heads and pushed their foreheads together. Sparks flew from their eyes. The beaten patrolmen sank powerless to the floor, like sacks of grain, and Chinu only rubbed his hands. All this time, the captive was still squirming and spinning on the floor. She again attracted Chinu's attention with her moans. Chinu approached her and in a mocking tone asked if the girl still wanted to tell him something. She answered with an affirmative hum. Finally, with one movement of his hand, he pulled the gag out of the exhausted prisoner's mouth and asked what her last word would be. The girl instantly jumped up and proudly declared that she was a demon with boiling blood. With boiling blood, she repeated in case Chinu did not hear right away. Chinu doubtfully asked if her blood really was boiling. The prisoner confirmed and added that that was why he was obliged to save her. The young demon asked how the girl could prove this. She replied that those 2 patrolmen could give testimony, saying that they know exactly who she is. Chinu continued to doubt and asked if the girl had any physical evidence. She replied that there would be some. For example, only demons with boiling blood had V-shaped horns. By the way, the girl's head was actually decorated with just such horns. The guy was in no hurry to believe the girl, because, despite her characteristics, she was caught anyway, so what use was she to him? The girl assured Chinu that this time the guards were just lucky and invited the guy to work together, and also arrogantly added that in the past, demons of Chinu's level would have been unworthy to even bring her slippers. Chinu silently and without explanation grabbed the girl by the throat. She tried to distract him and asked if he knew that demons acquire their abilities by devouring other demons. Chinu was intrigued by this news. The demoness demanded that Chinu release her immediately. She was furious with his actions. Chinu decided to clarify whether he understood everything correctly, whether eating one's own kind was really one of the ways to gain new skills. It seems that the demoness realized where Chinu was going and why his hands were still on her neck, and began to loudly call for help and beg to let her go. "Horn demon, what are you doing?" heard a voice behind Chinu. Probably the demoness again attracted someone's attention with her screams. However, this was not just another patrol. These were 4 demons, yes, the same one with which Chinu went on a search, and right now the bone demon demanded that Chinu let the girl go. The bone demon's eyes greedily glowed with a bloody light. He stretched out all 4 of his paws towards the girl, and Chinu thought that he could not so easily give up such valuable prey to another demon. Chinu continued to hold the demoness by the neck, and the bone demon did not like this very much. The guy finally removed his hands, took on the most innocent look and explained that he was simply adjusting the necklace on the demoness' neck. The bone demon was even generous with his praise, albeit of dubious sincerity, at which time another demon picked up the weakened demoness. The four demons, led by the one carrying the demoness in his arms, moved away along the corridor. They were talking among themselves that the sorcerer was about to open a portal, and Chinu understood that he had only miraculously escaped death. As soon as the demons moved forward, one of them immediately found himself under the gun of a sniper. Someone had been sitting in ambush for a long time and was waiting. The very first paths hit the target and literally riddled the demon. Everything around was splattered with blood. The rest of the demons froze in shock. Before their eyes, their relative was mercilessly shot. Watching this scene, Chinu thought that the reaction was not long in coming. At the opposite end of the corridor stood a group of armed guards, their captain holding the demons at gunpoint and ordering the patrolmen to prevent them from leaving. The fight between the demons and the patrolmen promised to be hot, and now the captain gives the order forward. But no, the demons do not intend to fight, they simply take to their heels and quickly run away along the corridor. Faster, Chinu urges the demons on, he breaks free and runs forward. The demon with the demoness in his arms hurries after him. Chinu runs even faster, the demon running behind tries to catch up with the guy and orders him to slow down and let him go ahead. A sudden flash of energy illuminates the entire corridor. Chinu realizes that someone else has interfered in their affairs. Chinu stops in the middle of the corridor and looks around. It looks like something interesting is coming up. "Hey, I'm talking to you," the bone demon shouts rudely. At this moment the elephant guards who came from out of nowhere strike with their huge jagged swords. The demon cannot withstand the next blow and releases the demoness from his clutches. She is about to fall. Chinu runs up with lightning speed and manages to pick up the girl in his arms. He is proud of himself. This is professionalism, he thinks. The elephant guards continue the fight with the demons. They do not notice that Chinu with the girl in his arms is making their way to the portal. The demoness dives into the portal, and then Chinu hears someone's voice, a voice that stutters and asks for help. Turning around, Chinu sees a demon. He sits exhausted on the ground and says that his uncle is in charge of this operation, and if Chinu helps, the demon will ask his uncle to generously reward the savior. Without saying a word, Chinu approaches the demon and kicks him with all his might. The blow shatters him into hundreds of bones. Chinu grins and says that he will ask his uncle to find a nicer coffin for him. At this moment, Chinu hears the voices of the guards and the stomping of their feet along the corridor. They are about to catch up with him. The young demon realizes that he is not able to cope with them all. It is becoming too dangerous, and therefore he also dives into the portal. The chase was avoided. The portal takes Chinu to the demon headquarters, where he is relatively safe. Chinu's headquarters is met by dozens of different demons, and apparently the uncle of the ingloriously dead demon is also here. That's right, demons are surrounding Chinu from all sides. They want to know where his nephew is, what his fate is. Chinu makes a dramatic pause and bursts into crocodile tears. He tells how his nephew died bravely in battle. Without making a sound, he died, as befits a hero. Is this really true? The bone demon cannot believe his ears. Of course, Chinu begins, and after a short pause he shouts that it was a joke. He adds that his nephew led a miserable existence, his leg was cut off, and before his death he begged Chinu for help. Unfortunately, Chinu pretends to lament, "I couldn't help him." The demon looks at Chinu's face incredulously and mutters, "That's how." Suddenly Chinu hears the voice of the demoness. The portal brought her here earlier, and she gradually comes to her senses and asks where she ended up. The demon explains to her that she is at their headquarters and is now safe. The demoness wants to know who the hero is who saved her. She intends to generously reward her savior. "It's me." Chinu modestly waves her hand, and the demoness freezes. That's who she didn't imagine as her savior. Out of anger and rage, the demoness emits a piercing scream, so much so that the demons almost go deaf. However, Chinu already knows how to calm her down. He approaches and silences the girl with a light blow. The demon clearly does not like Chinu's methods of upbringing. He stares at Chinu in surprise and asks what he is doing. A flock of huge bats circles above the heads of the demons. Apparently, these are some kind of scouts, and they report that people have activated teleports and will soon be here. The demon boss does not understand how people knew about their location. The boss is informed that the people have freed all their prisoners from their cells. The demons are confused by such news, they vying with each other to discuss what to do next, and Chinu reflects that it seems that a rescue team has arrived. The demon boss orders to retreat and immediately go to another headquarters, and he orders Chinu to grab the demoness and protect her at the cost of his own life. Chinu promises that everything will be done in the best possible way, but he thinks to himself that now that the battle has reached its peak, there is no time to waste, we need to act according to the plan. The demons run as fast as they can, as the boss ordered them. Chinu rushes ahead and points to the door, saying they need to run there. Throwing the demoness over his shoulder, Chinu runs ahead, the demon boss can barely keep up with him. Chinu rushes forward, deftly dives into the door and slams it right in front of the boss demon's nose, who is frozen in shock. The boss demon is trying to break through the door, but Chinu is not up to it now. He sees in front of him a giant demon in berserker armor. He crossed his arms over his chest and looks expectantly at Chinu. Is this really the same berserker demon? Chinu guesses, and he breaks out in a cold sweat from excitement. The berserker demon seems amused by the scene that just unfolded before his eyes. He asks Chinu if he really slammed the door right in the demon's face. Chinu wonders why he cares. Chinu finally lowers the demoness to the floor and thinks that since the orcs have not yet found themselves here, it means that the probability of transition is not very high. The berserker demon, it seems, has already had his eye on the demoness. He offers Chinu a deal and promises to reward him adequately if he gives him the girl. Chinu holds the girl by the shoulders and says that he is used to being a villain first and not a gentleman, so if a price cannot be agreed upon, the conclusion is obvious. In this case, Chinu promises, he will keep the girl for himself and enjoy her himself. The berserker demon's eyes are already burning with greed, and he offers Chinu the essence of a high-level demon, which will increase the strength of his demon armor. Essence, Chinu asks, to which the berserker demon continues to bargain. He offers another essence that will increase self-healing. Chinu doesn't like either the arrogant tone of the berserker demon or his proposals, because, the guy thinks, if you don't take into account the high status of your opponent, all his proposals may turn out to be cheap. Chinu states that he is confused, they are wondering what the self-defense and self-healing abilities are. All this time, Chinu shamelessly pawed the demoness, squeezed her, and this sight almost made the berserker demon drool bloody with envy and lust. Finally, Chinu announces that he has made a decision, but he still does not let go of the girl, teasing the demon. It seems that the demoness is starting to like Chinu's rough caresses. She twirls seductively in his arms. It's getting hot. The demoness clings to Chinu, looks into his eyes, whispers to him that he is very good. The berserker interrupts these tendernesses and asks what Chinu chose as a reward. He replies that everything, and adds that the demon will give him everything if only he would return the demoness. The berserker demon thought deeply. Chinu advises him to weigh what is really more important to him. With these words, he puts a dagger to the girl's throat and says that the demon is capable of making the right choice himself. The berserker demon looks extremely thoughtful. Finally he breaks the silence and says that he agrees to Chinu's terms. The huge demon hands Chinu a blue luminous sphere. Apparently this is the essence of self-defense and self-healing, then extends his clawed paw to Chinu and asks him to return the girl to him. But Chinu is in no hurry to fulfill his part of the deal. Suddenly he declares that he has one more demand. The berserker demon is beside himself with such impudence. The berserker demon warns Chinu against being too arrogant and greedy, but Chinu insists on his second demand, which is to ask him to tell him how to use all these new skills. The ancient demon is surprised. He asks Chinu if he really doesn't know how to absorb essences. The demoness enthusiastically promises the guy to teach him. Chinu doubts and asks if she can do it, to which the girl playfully remarks that any demon raised in purgatory knows how to do it. The girl reports that devouring each other's flesh and essence is the distinctive ability of demons. The demoness instructs Chinu to take advantage of every convenient opportunity as soon as it appears, but that's not all. The demonic mentor reports that if you add a drop of her bodily fluid, the fusion will happen faster. The girl leans towards Chinu's lips, but the guy is clearly not in the mood for kisses. He forcefully pushes the demoness away, and so flies to the nearest wall. Just like that, the blow sent the girl flying away and stuck her upper body in the wall. Chinu follows the demoness' advice and takes the opportunity to absorb her essence while she is immobilized. Apparently, the process of absorbing the essence was successful, because the system displays a notification that the levels of self-healing skill and armor power have been increased. Chinu rejoices. Chinu turns to the Berserker demon and asks if he still has such a thing, but he is extremely surprised how Chinu managed to absorb the essence so easily, because ordinary demons take 3 months to do this. The Berserker demon is seething with envy of Chinu. The guy sees this by his growing energy points, and the demon warns him that if Chin absorbs another entity, he may die. Chinu notices that the demon is emanating anger and hatred towards him, and wonders what he did to cause such a reaction. Suddenly, Chinu realizes that the waves of hatred are not coming from the demon at all. The system tells him that the true source of hatred is behind the guy's back. The demoness, who by this time had already managed to free herself, approaches Chinu and sees that he is being covered with demonic armor right before his eyes, but for some reason a puddle of blood is spilling around him. She carefully kneels down next to Chinu and sympathetically asks about his well-being. Chinu thinks that the armor appeared too late and will now need time to recover. It turns out that the bone demon is to blame. He was able to get into the room and managed to wound Chinu. The demoness asks not to touch her servant. The bone demon exudes anger. He tells the demoness in a threatening tone that Chinu made a fatal mistake when he dared to touch his fellow tribesmen. The bone demon raised his giant sword above his head and roared that Chinu would pay for his rudeness. The demoness apparently decided to protect Chinu at all costs. She knelt down and shielded him with her body. The Berserker demon defended the demoness and said that she was a scarce commodity and could not be disposed of at will. The bone demon sked and demanded that the Berserker shut up. He clearly had his own plans for the demoness. The bone demon grabbed the girl by the shoulders and dragged her along. She resisted and screamed that she didn't want to and wouldn't go anywhere with him. The demoness managed to escape from the bone demon's grip. She screamed and rushed towards Chinu and extended her hands to him. She leaned towards the guy, ran her tongue seductively across her lips and said that she knew she was not Chinu's type, but it didn't matter. The boiling blood demons were always driven only by emotions. Chinu was trying to understand what it all meant. When she touched Chinu, the flash of energy around her could be compared to a supernova explosion. A bright light engulfed both of them as the demoness pressed her lips to Chinu's lips. It took a lot of effort for the girl to break away from Chinu, and when the bone demon took her away, she screamed and asked the guy not to forget her, and the demon advised Chinu better not to forget about him. Apparently, the drops of the demoness' bodily fluid really worked as they should, because the system showed Chinu a message about the demon's newfound power, boiling blood. By this time, the bone demon had managed to transfer the demoness into the hands of the Berserker, who looked pleased and gave the demon permission to do what he wanted. The bone demon looked back at Chinu in surprise. He did not expect that the guy would be able to stand up after his attack. Well, if Chinu stood up, then we can return to the old issue, namely the fight between them, the level 6 white bone demon and Chinu, the level 2 horn demon. Chinu by this time was fully dressed in demonic armor. His fists were adorned with razor-sharp claws, and he encouraged the demon to attack first. The opponent did not need to be asked twice, and the very first blow from the bone demon literally shook the space, and in the blink of an eye, Chinu lost his demonic claws. The forces were unequal. It was clear that Chinu was having a hard time with the confrontation. At the same time, nothing could be said from the face of the bone demon. His white skull did not express any emotions. Chinu intended to deliver a devastating blow to the bone demon. He flew into the air and raised his fist. With all his demonic strength, he slammed his fist straight into the demon's bony chest. Chinu's hand literally counted all of his ribs. The demon recoiled from the blow. It was unexpectedly strong. The bone demon was hoping to deal with the guy with one snap of his finger. The bone demon never ceased to be amazed at Chinu's strength. It was an unusually powerful attack for an ordinary horn demon. Not bad, boy, the bone demon praised Chinu, to which he invited the demon to taste a few more of his blows. Here it is. Chinu heard a cry. It was probably the guards who finally broke through the portal and fled here. Chinu and the demon stood opposite each other. Neither was ready to give up. The space between them was tense to the limit. Before the bone demon had time to strike again, he was hit by hundreds of bullets fired by the patrolmen who arrived in time. An entire squad of guards emptied the clips of their cannons at the demon. In the heat of battle they shouted that they would destroy all the demons and avenge their fallen comrades. The bone demon, who seemed unaffected by the bullets, grabbed a huge piece of rock and threw it at the guards as easily as a blade of grass. Die! The demon roared in rage, and the impulse he launched, like a laser, mowed down and killed almost the entire squad of guards. Chinu realized that a wonderful opportunity had come his way. Here was his chance, and with all his might he slammed his fist into the skull of the bone demon. The bone demon didn't even move. He asked if Chinu was really so naive that he expected to break through his armor. Chinu only grinned in response and activated the blood-boiling skill. Chinu was eager to try out the new demonic skill in practice, and he prepared well to strike again. Once, the tightly clenched fist, encased in demonic armor, slammed into the demon's skull again, a blow the enemy had already felt. The demon grabbed his muzzle and began to lament how Chinu with his second level was able to hurt him. The demon was inflamed with extreme hatred towards Chinu. Was it really the boiling demon blood that gave you strength? The bone demon guessed. Chinu didn't even need to answer anything. His demonic armor transforming before his eyes said everything for him. Ready to immediately rush into battle, Chinu warned his opponent that it would be very painful now, and he had better prepare for it. With these words, he quickly flew up to the demon and dealt him devastating blows. Literally all the bones of the enemy cracked. The surviving guards watched the fight with transfixion. They could not believe that the demons were fighting among themselves. In his new, improved demonic armor and with new skills, Chinu dealt with the bone demon as if playfully. He accompanied each blow with a mocking laugh. With another blow, Chinu sent the demon straight under the dome of the building, but the demon broke through it and fell to the ground with a terrifying deafening roar. The bone demon crumbled into thousands of bones, and the ominous mask that covered its face jumped off and broke. The guards looked at each other in amazement. Was the level 6 demon really dead? The guards looked with fascination and apprehension at the victorious demon, that is, at Chinu. They did not know what to do, because he could deal with them with the same ease. Chinu lay on the ground, exhausted after the battle and already without armor. His clothes were torn to shreds. One of the patrolmen took a closer look at him and his first desire to kill the demon was replaced by recognition. He realized that he had already seen this guy somewhere. One of the guards recognized Chinu as that horned devil from the school league. He called his partners and demanded urgent help for the guy. Help arrived quickly. Chinu soon found himself in the capable hands of doctors, and he was sent to the 3rd City Hospital. Yuli and Yuna could not miss the opportunity to check on Chinu, and now Yuli is already standing on the threshold of the room. She sees the nurse doing something very strange, screaming, "Asshole." She is suffocating Chinu with a pillow. Yuli rushes forward and pushes the nurse away from Chinu, who shouts indignantly that she is a calf and not a dung beetle. Chinu gasps for air, waves goodbye to the nurse and says, "Bye-bye, dung bug." The guy turns over on his side. Behind him the furious fuss between Yuli and the nurse continues, but Chinu's thoughts are only occupied with how to recover quickly and how to collect energy points. "You are seriously injured, but you still find time to misbehave." With these words Aunt Yuna enters the room. "It seems that not everything is as bad as I thought," she continues. Is she truly happy to see her nephew alive and almost unharmed? But Chinu is not so happy about the meeting. He wonders what brought his auntie here and whether she is going to take advantage of his weak position to finish him off. It's as if the aunt reads his thoughts. In response to unspoken suspicions, she says that she is now thinking about whether she could kill him, since he was able to defeat the bone demon. Chinu laughs awkwardly, scratches his head and replies that it was just an accident. The aunt continues her tirade. She says that she knows that Chinu is not well now, but not everything is so bad. Yuna doesn't let up as she stares at Chinu and asks why he thinks she's here. Aunt Yuna leans on Chinu's bed and, looking ingratiatingly into his eyes, reminds him that he once said one thing. Aunt Yuna recalls that Chinu once claimed that there are good ones among the demons. "Yes, I'm very good," Chinu agrees enthusiastically, but he thinks to himself where he's been with that girl, why she left him. Suddenly, with a loud knock and scream, "Idiot," the door swings open. The whole group of doggy sisters is standing on the threshold. Chinu cheers to himself. He is so glad that they arrived on time. Xiao Xiao is the first to start the conversation. she introduces herself to Aunt Yuna and says that they are Chinu's comrades. The girl stutters with excitement. The aunt asks her not to be nervous, because they have already met before. Yuna asks if the sisters came to visit Chinu. Xiao nods in agreement. Well, guys, have fun, and in the meantime I'll go and prepare something. With these words Yuna turned around and walked out the door. Everyone gathered in the ward breathed a sigh of relief. Chinu felt the greatest relief. He sighed loudly, as if it had passed, and straightened up on the bed. Finally, the danger had passed. The dog sisters looked both proud and anxious. They surrounded Chinu's bed and clearly wanted to say something, but did not know how to start. Xiao was the first to be found. As an elder sister, she volunteered to give a speech. She said that she could not find words to express her gratitude to Chinu for sacrificing his life for them. They would like to repay him for his kindness, but with money it can't be measured. Not at all. Throw away the money, Chinu immediately responded. He was only happy to accept gratitude in monetary terms, but Xiao replied that they didn't have much money. What then? Chinu asked. In response to this, the four dog sisters pushed Xiao forward and said that they already had a ready-made decision, and the four of them made it. Suddenly, with the words, "We give it to you," the sisters pushed the eldest straight into Chinu's arms. The guy was simply dumbfounded, and for Xiao it seemed to be a surprise. Little dog sister faced Chinu directly. Both of them didn't know how to react to the awkward scene. Xiao turned to her sisters. They giggled embarrassedly, covering their mouths with their palms, and the older sister barked at them, saying, why was she the only one who was not aware of such a plan? One of the sisters noticed the blush rising to Xiao's cheeks from embarrassment and decided to tease the eldest, saying that the sister was blushing. Xiao snapped and asked her not to talk nonsense. Chinu was pretty tired of the girl's fuss. The noisy chatter tired him, and he was thinking about how his skills had changed after defeating the bone dragon. He was looking for an opportunity to test them. The morning of the next day came. Chinu woke up, stretched out in bed, yawned with pleasure and thought with anticipation that today was entirely his own. No one would bother him and he could go about his business. He felt well rested and full of energy. The flow of his dreams and plans for the day was interrupted by a knock on the door of the chamber. Chinu shouted angrily. Who else was there? An unknown gentleman in a suit, accompanied by two other gentlemen, entered the ward and greeted Chinu. He addressed him as if he were a hero. The gentleman wanted to know in great detail how the last few days of Chinu's life went. They were especially interested in the fight with the bone demon. Chinu satisfied their curiosity. The gentleman listened to every word. Chinu finally realized the purpose for which these gentlemen came. He assumed that they were representatives of different universities. Now he is a tasty morsel for any of them, and they came to offer him a good place. However, Chinu would not have been Chinu if he had not decided to show cunning and not bargain. He leaned back on the pillow and said, I am waiting for your proposals, gentlemen. The starting bid price is 500,000. One of the gentlemen had a strange expression on his face and stood there as if he had taken his breath away, but his companion told Chinu that he obviously misunderstood them. The third gentleman, however, got it right and was already haggling over the bid. He offered the sum of 600,000. Chinu was delighted at the intelligence of at least one of the trio and praised him. He promised that they would be proud of him, but he was in no hurry to close the auction. He repeated the gentleman's bid several times, hoping that someone would outbid it. Apparently, the gentlemen only had to get excited and frenzied, and now they were vying with each other, shouting over each other, raising the bid, 700,000, 800,000, 900,000, and now one of the trio was offering a whole million. It seems that they were only pretending to be decent and respectable, or that passion does terrible things to people, but the passions between them reigned no less than in the arena. Each tried to beat the opponent's bet, and the sum sounded absolutely fantastic. The last bid heard at the moment was 1,350,000. The gentleman obviously intended to impress Chinu with this amount and added, as you can see, our university does not worry about money, and asked Chinu if he was ready to join them. Chinu seemed quite pleased with the last bet. He jumped up and turned to the representative of Tang Leen University, and congratulated him on the successful transaction for 1,400,000. The Tang Leen University representative stared at Chinu in surprise and retorted that he had only offered 1,350,000. Chinu walked up to the representative, hugged him and threw his hand on his shoulder. as if he were an old friend, and said that another 50,000 was a commission. Because such auctions are not held for free, the representative had no choice but to agree, because Chinu threatened to give victory to the owner of the previous bet. With a winning gesture, the university representative raised Chinu's hand and solemnly proclaimed that from now on he was considered a student of Tianluen University, and added that their teachers were amazing. The representative of Tianluen University began to sound like a nightingale, praising his educational institution, saying that they are unique in their individual approach to students. They have fewer students, which means that, here Chinu tensed up and stopped delving into the master's speech. Chinu decided to ask again if he had made a mistake, whether there really were fewer students at Tianluen University, and the representative confirmed that yes, their very special approach to each student guarantees the success of each of them. Chinu's hand flew into the air and escaped from the representative's paw. In response to his puzzled look, the guy gloomily said that the deal was cancelled. He thought to himself that individual training meant that he could only anger one teacher, and this categorically did not suit him. Chinu turned to the representative of the university who proposed the previous bid. This gentleman represented Longting Academy, and Chinu decided to ask him in more detail about admission. In the end, Chinu managed to enter the university, receiving over 1,700,000. Representatives of other educational institutions were also not offended and received their share for silence. After being discharged from the hospital, Chinu began to rehabilitate himself. He again fooled around and fought with Yuli, quarreled with his auntie, in a word, led his usual old life, and at this time the news of the demonic invasion spread at the speed of light. On one of these unremarkable days, Chinu and Yuli, as always, were playing and training near the house, when suddenly a car drove up to the gate. Judging by the appearance of a military one, and two soldiers in uniform got out of it. The stern soldier with a wolfish appearance immediately got down to business without preamble, asking whether Mrs. Yuna was at home. Chinu barely had time to cover Yuli's mouth and lie that Yuna had gone out somewhere. The girl was clearly going to blurt out too much and admit that her mother was at home. The soldiers continued to ask when, in this case, she would return home. Chinu initially replied that in about 10 minutes. The soldiers said that it would not be difficult for them to wait. In response to this, Chinu decided to stop their ardor and muttered that Yuna would return sooner in 100 years. The soldier's partner seemed to understand that they would not be meeting with Lady Yuna today, and gave Chinu the letter, strictly instructing him to hand it over only to his auntie. Before the military vehicle had time to drive away and disappear over the horizon, Chinu crumpled up the letter and threw it away. Yuli bent down to pick up the letter. She did not understand why Chinu threw away what was intended for her mother. Chinu began to patiently explain that the soldiers delivered the letter immediately after the demon invasion, which means there can only be one reason. Aunt Yuna is a famous warrior in the past. Chinu continued his explanations. It's easy to guess why they came. Little Yuli asked if they really came to pick up their mother. The answer was obvious, and Yuli jumped up, defending her mother. She argued that she was no longer as strong as before, and she had health problems. How could Yuna be useful on the battlefield? Chinu hugged and pressed Yuli to him, calming her down. He tried to explain to her that an officer with combat experience is priceless. A good general can significantly reduce the number of casualties in a war and save the lives of soldiers. Therefore, Chinu advised, just pretend that nothing happened and don't tell anyone about it. Chinu instructed his sister, and to prove his words, he took and tore the letter into small pieces. Chinu tried to distract his sister and redirect her attention to something else, for example, to lunch, but the scraps of the letter under her feet haunted Yuli. She collected them and took them to her room. Sitting in her room, by the light of a night lamp, Yuli tried to glue together small scraps and get to the bottom of it. She was both curious and anxious. Finally, the tape, glue and Yuli's skillful hands did their job, and the girl began to read. The letter opened with the story that today a medium-sized portal had been discovered in the northern region, and, as we know, government barriers are fragile and can easily be broken through. The message in the letter was that at the sites of penetrations, space-time wormholes are formed, within which various changes occur. This is how invaders enter our world, and, unfortunately, not many warriors are able to break through there. Thanks to such brave and skillful warriors, the raids of invaders can be held back, but over time, such wormholes will become more and more numerous. Yuli held the letter with trembling hands and read further. It was about the fact that the appearance of the portal is a bad sign. As soon as the other side cuts off the transmissions, demon troops will fall on the northern borders. The good news, the letter said, was that the canal was still not blocked. Further, the city administration, which, in fact, sent this letter, invited us to join and help in the fight. Yuli finished reading the end of the letter, diving headlong into her closet with clothes. It seems that a certain plan had already matured in her head. That's right, after about 5 minutes, Yuli was in full combat gear, a sword was visible behind her, and with the words that she would not allow her mother to take risks, she decisively took matters into her own hands. Before Yuli even had time to leave the room, she heard a familiar mocking voice. Yes, it was Chinu, and he wanted to know where little Yuli was going. Yuli didn't want to waste time on long conversations, so instead of answering, she simply threw her fist forward. The blow hit him right in the chest, but Yuli could just as well have hit the rock. The guy didn't even flinch, but she realized that she couldn't stop. Little Yuli hit Chinu with hundreds of small blows. He seemed unperturbed, but Yuli could not help but doubt whether she would kill her brother. However, she was in vain to fear. Although her blows hit the target, they hit as if they were hitting a wall or a rock. Chinu didn't even move. He had all the protection he needed. Chinu clearly saw through Yuli's intentions, but decided to play along with her at first and asked where she was going. Yuli decided to lie and, taking on a completely innocent look, she replied that she was just going to take a walk. Chinu volunteered with her, then she said that she would go eat, and again he imposed his company. Yuli became furious and shouted that she was going to toilet, and again the persistent guy offered to join. "You can't be with me," Yuli snapped, to which Chinu said that he had just learned on the news that a large number of masters were heading to the portal. "Really?" Chinu guessed. "Do you want to go there and take your mother's place?" He immediately realized that Yuli's curiosity would not allow her not to stick her nose into the letter. Chinu openly laughed at Yuli and her heroic noble intentions. He doubted that a newcomer like Yuli was able to withstand the demon army. Yuli prayerfully folded her hands on her chest and turned to Chinu. She looked into his eyes soulfully and said, "Although you are a demon, I know you will not hurt me. We grew up together, and I hope that I can trust you." And Chinu didn't seem to pay any attention to his little sister's pleas. Instead, he loudly called Aunt Yuna, saying that your daughter is about to die here, and asked her to deal with it. Yuli tried to calm down and shut up Chinu in time, but it was too late. Her mother's heels were already clicking along the corridor. Aunt Yuna walked over and lit a cigarette. She took a deep drag and exhaled, then said that if the commander-in-chief had called her personally, she would not have known about anything. "But my dear children," Yuna turned to Chinu and Yuli, "they simply took and threw away my letter." Yuli immediately tried to justify herself, saying that it's not her at all, that's all. Yuli did not have time to finish and give Chinu away. He closed her mouth in time. He would have gladly closed her, not only her mouth, but also handcuffed her to the bed so that she could properly think about her behavior. However, at this very time, Yuna had already put on new elite armor. She was giving Chinu the last instructions. He remained in charge and had to keep an eye on Yuli and not allow her to leave the room. "Are you really going to help them?" Chinu asked. "You're going to die." He tried to scare the auntie, anything to keep her from going. He couldn't think of putting her life in danger. It seemed that it was impossible to convince the aunt. She was unshakable and only said that she needed to close her own gestalt. She was serious. She was already clutching a weapon in her hand. Aunt Yuna turned around and left. Chinu tried in a hurry to think of something else to stop her, but it was all in vain. He couldn't find the right words. Was she really going to take revenge on the one who destroyed her squad? Chinu thought to Carlos, the native owner of this body. Is he really here too? Chinu wondered. He was thinking about what to do, whether he should follow the parent who gave his son into the hands of the enemy or he could stay at home and fulfill his aunt's instructions, namely, make sure that Yuli doesn't do anything wrong. The second option seemed much more attractive to him, and he actually carried out his threat, tied the girl up and left her on the bed. The night passed. The next morning came. Chinu with a bowl of porridge knocked on the door of her room and called her to have breakfast. There is no answer. Chinu enters the room and sees a completely empty room. The girl seemed to have disappeared, and even the chains with which she was tied are broken into links and pieces. Chinu freezes with a plate of porridge in the middle of the room. He is perplexed how the girl managed to escape, and also break the chains. After all, she chewed it. With these thoughts he goes to the window to look around. Throwing the uneaten breakfast on the table, Chinu himself puts on his combat uniform and leaves the house. Needless to say, the stubborn girl has already created additional problems for him, but he must find her. Chinu guesses where to look for the girl, and immediately goes to the place of the rift. Coming closer, he sees a huge wormhole. The military has gathered a bunch of equipment around. A crowd of order fighters is gathering. Pushing through the crowd that just came to look at the rift, Chinu does not stop loudly calling Yuli's name. He hopes that the fugitive will respond herself. Some woman with the head of a cow looks at Chinu and asks in a dissatisfied voice why everyone is staring at her. Chinu apologizes, saying that he is just looking for his sister, but it seems that they have already noticed him and considered him suspicious. And sure enough, the bull man is already shouting at Chinu that bulls don't have horns like Chinu, which means that it would be better for him to get out of here quickly. Chinu calms him down and tries to explain everything, but the angry crowd does not want to listen to any explanations. Obviously, they have already seen a terrible demon in him, so Chinu has to flee. Running away from a crowd of angry bulls and feeling as if he were at a bullfight, Chinu laughs at himself. Not only did he never find Yuli, but now he will also get hit in the hat. Suddenly, in the midst of the chase, someone grabs him by the shirt and knocks him down. Chinu falls straight to the ground and hits the back of his head painfully. What the hell is this? The guy thinks, when suddenly some girl climbs on him. No, wait, not some girl. He won't confuse the smell of this wool with anything. That's right, it's Xiao Xiao, the big dog's sister. She sits astride Chinu and motions for him to be silent, but he can't help but ask. He wonders what she's doing here. The sister replies that she is here on an internship, but what Chinu is doing here is a mystery to her. He replies that this is a military garrison, not a school. You won't get lost here that easily. So the other dog sisters arrived. They nod in greeting to Chinu, saying that they haven't seen each other for a long time, and at this time Xiao Xiao continues to shamelessly sit on Chinu. Chinu explains that his little sister ran away to join the army, so he went in search of her. Xiao Xiao seems to understand who he is talking about, because he hurries to clarify whether he is talking about the daughter of Centurion Yuna. It is about her. Chinu confirms that he rises to his feet and tries to recover, his head still spinning from the fall. Xiao Xiao asks one of the sisters if she saw Yuli. The sister replies that she didn't see it from the outside, but perhaps Yuli managed to use the gates of time and space. Chinu is shocked by what he heard. His little sister and the gate of time and space. This simply cannot be. Is it really that easy to join the army? Xiao Xiao asks Chinu why he is so angry since Lady Yuna is also here. To which Chinu remarks that Auntie will simply kill him if he does not return little Yuli home. Well, this issue is easy to solve, says one of the dog sisters, and invites Chinu to join them. In return they promise to help with the search. Chinu briefly nods and agrees. In the end, he has no other choice. He is obliged to bring Yuli home at all costs, even at the cost of his own life. One of the sisters asks the other why they rushed so actively to help Chinu. The other whispers in response that later they will try to get money from him. The team leader, Hudi, wonders if Chinu is really going to join their company. One of the sisters praises Chinu in every possible way, saying that his biceps are powerful. Just look, and in general, such a fighter will definitely not hurt in their squad. Well, Hudi smiles benevolently. Since you have decided to join our squad, we need to test you, and her proposal surprises not only Chinu, but also the sisters. And here is the first test for Chinu. He must lift that thing, which one Chinu can't see yet. The thing turns out to be a hefty track tank. It probably weighs 5 tons, no less, and Chinu understands that this will not be an easy task. The guy approaches a military vehicle. There is a crowd of soldiers around. They are walking around with guns at the ready. Seizing the moment, Chinu creeps up to the tank, wraps his hands around the tracks and pushes the car up. A miracle, but the tank gives in. Chinu lifted it a good meter above his head. Chinu is great, the sisters are proudly chanting, and at this time the soldiers are talking among themselves. Did Hudi really tell Chinu to lift a tank, not a box, and what's the point of such a fighter? Is he really a loader? Hudi watches with delight as Chinu manages to lift the entire tank above his head. She wonders to herself what they fed Chinu that made him grow so strong, and says out loud that that's enough. he passed the test. That's all. Chinu is on the team. Hudi gives him a blue patch and informs him that he will start work today. Chinu himself only thinks about how he will bring Yuli home. If only Chinu knew where Yuli was at the moment and what she was doing, and at this moment the general of the Knights Raymond, Yuna's first love, drags Yuli by the hood and tells her, "Come on, help, that's what you asked for, help." Yuli looks at General Raymond and with a pleading look in his eyes asks to join his squad. General Raymond is very stern in appearance. He continues to hold Yuli tightly by the hood and says that no matter how kind he is to her, he cannot ignore her weak skills. The general reports that the guards have been ordered to closely monitor her, and with bitterness in his voice adds that her mother has already lost a lot. It is impossible for her to lose her daughter as well. But Uncle Raymond began to beg General Yuli, but immediately fell silent. Even she understood that the dialogue was over. At this time, Chinu, together with Xiao Xiao, was in a huge warehouse of military equipment. There were tanks, armored vehicles, whatnot, but only one thought stuck in Chinu's head, about Yuli. A fire breaks out in one of the neighboring warehouses, explosions are heard, military personnel and vehicles flock in that direction. And Chinu is doing boring and joyless work at this time, carrying bags of cement, sand and God knows what else back and forth. He is tired and exhausted. During a break between loading bags, he sits next to Xiao Xiao. She hands him a bottle of energy drink. Chinu takes a sip and sadly remarks that how can he find Yuli here, among such a bunch of people. She is like a needle in a haystack. Chinu's thoughts are disturbed by the cry of a worker. He calls to be careful, and then fuss, noise and other screams are heard. Oh gods, not a moment of peace. A giant mutant monster is simply smashing the warehouse into pieces. It is taller than a 5-story building, it has black skin and red eyes, and it's impossible to even count how many paws it has. The military, to their credit, react quickly. Now the tanks are firing at the monster with cannons. Now the shot from machine guns is already flying at the monster, but it doesn't care. It seems that nothing really takes the monster. Even the largest caliber weapons are not able to pierce its skin. Suddenly, a manned aircraft rushes past the monster at speed, with Xiao Xiao sitting at the helm, and it seems that she shamelessly stole this aircraft. Since one of the military is heard screaming, he orders her to return immediately. With one blow of its paw, the monster knocks Xiao Xiao out of the cabin. She flies, somersaulting in the air, but Chinu notices this in time, and he intends to prevent the girl from crashing. Right as he runs, he puts on his demonic armor and rushes straight towards the monster. In a fantastic way, Chinu manages to save Xiao Xiao, and there she is again at the helm. With a powerful leap, Chinu covers the distance to the monster, and in the jump he delivers a crushing blow, and the monster literally cracks and falls to pieces. Hot scarlet blood splashes in all directions. It turns out that Chinu's new armor is so strong because it is a new characteristic, Bone Demon armor. The guy jumps into Xiao Xiao's flying machine and asks her to fly faster. At this time, the military follows them in an armored vehicle. The commander orders them to catch up. During the journey, Chinu logs into the system and chooses which stat to improve next. The young man finds an interesting option. He wonders what will happen if he strengthens it, whether he will be able to reach the level of that mutant, or whether he will suddenly grow 10 meters. In his wildest dreams, he already sees himself 10 meters tall. Everyone else is like small insects and worships him. Chinu decides to try this option, and not in vain. He directly feels this surge of living force, this amazing, incomparable feeling. This is the power that literally hears Chinu's admiring voices. Someone was even blinded by Chinu's greatness and radiance. However, in reality, not much has changed. At least Chinu has not grown 10 meters, but the girls look at him strangely. Yeah, the girls are undoubtedly interested. They look at Chinu with all their eyes, point their fingers at him, giggle embarrassedly and whisper about his strength, incredible strength. In a misunderstanding, Chinu himself begins to feel embarrassed. It's not very pleasant when 4 pairs of girls' eyes are looking at you, and you don't even understand what has caused such genuine interest. Suddenly looking down, Chinu suddenly realizes what was the reason for their interest. It is really strength, male strength that has grown by a good 20 centimeters and is about to tear his pants. Chinu doesn't know where to go from embarrassment, when suddenly the aircraft makes a signal and stops, and now Chinu sees legs in familiar armor. For sure, it's Aunt Yuna. trying to control herself, her emotions, and finally what was happening in her pants. Chinu mutters, "Auntie," and stammers. It turned out that Xiao Xiao landed the aircraft on the headquarters site. The sisters and Chinu descend to the ground. They are met by a guard of honor and saluted. Aunt Yuna is standing in the center of the platform. Seeing Chinu, she immediately rushes to him and asks if he shouldn't be looking after Yuli. Chinu tries to turn the conversation into a joke. He says that he, a man, cannot keep up with the horse, so he accidentally lost her daughter. Auntie is silent, but thinks to herself that Chinu probably doesn't know that Yuli was found by Raymond. He came with sincere intentions to find her. Perhaps he really has changed. Yuna understands that Chinu is only pretending that he doesn't care about everything, but he says completely different things out loud. She roughly grabs Chinu by the collar and orders him to leave and not return until he finds Yuli. Suddenly, Chinu rushes forward and buries his face right between the aunt's lush breasts. Oddly enough, she does not push him away. She only tells him that in the future he should not agree to something that he cannot fulfill. Chinu slyly asks his aunt what will happen if he agrees. She answers in an icy tone that in this case he will die. Auntie laments that Chinu doesn't listen to her at all and slaps him. No matter what, Chinu feels guilty. He feels like he has let down and disappointed his auntie, and promises that he will find Yuli no matter what. Aunt Yuna turns away, signaling that the conversation is over, and at that moment Chinu hears someone calling his name. The guy turns towards the voice and sees a dark-haired gentleman with a mustache and a tie. He, accompanied by a whole group of armed soldiers, approaches Chinu. This is Li Ku, the commander-in-chief of Region C. He invites Chinu to chat with him. Chinu immediately snaps to attention and reports, emphasizing every word, that he is fine. He has lost his younger sister, but he will certainly find her. Mr. Li Ku applauds Chinu, but the next second 2 guns are already pointed at the guy's face. Chinu immediately reads the situation, salutes and loudly replies that he is serving the country. Mr. Li Ku seems to be pleased with the guy, as he hugs him by the shoulders and admires how smart the younger generation is. Li Ku takes Chinu away. The dog sisters look after him, and Aunt Yuna also follows him with her eyes. She thinks about whether it is really too late. The commander takes Chinu into his tent. He sits down at the table, and Chinu is surrounded by armed soldiers. Leaning forward, Li Ku says that he called Chinu for a reason. He has a request. A request? Chinu asks again. In response to this, Li Ku continues. He says that he will not force anything or force him to make a choice. He asks to listen to him first. Chinu agrees to listen and Li Ku begins to explain. He shows on the map the approximate location of the demons. The demons need a key that will leave the space between the worlds open forever, and if the demons' plan comes true, they will be able to attack at any time. The guy guesses what the request is faster than Li Ku voices it. He wants Chinu to find this key for them, and the soldiers on the front line will distract the attention of the demons. Obviously, these words do not come easily to him, but Li Ku concludes that Chinu will be forced to do the rest himself. If he does not want to, he has every right to refuse, but his help is vital. Chinu is in no hurry to make a decision right away. He asks Li Ku for time to think. Li Ku does not answer, but under his gaze, Chinu leaves the tent, where Aunt Yuna is already waiting for him. She says that she has already assembled a group to take Chinu out of here. Chinu is very worried about Auntie. He wants to know what their chances of winning are, but Yuna doesn't say anything in response. Instead, she asks to give something to Yuli when they get out of here, and drops a golden amulet in the form of a horse's head onto Chinu's palm. Chinu looks at it with curiosity. The guy tightly squeezes the amulet in his fist. He shouts after his aunt, will she really not go with him, to which she refuses and turns away. Chinu appeals to the voice of reason and the instinct of self-preservation. He tells his aunt that she is no longer a soldier, and her strength is no longer the same, but she does not want to listen. The country comes first, the personal comes second, the aunt argues. Her gait is confident, and the boots of an elite military uniform mark every step. Aunt Yuna turned around and said over her shoulder that it was not in her rules to retreat. At that moment Chinu thought that he had seen different facets of Yuna, and horror, and pride, and softness, and tenderness, but never before had she been so dazzling like in that moment. Looking at his aunt in the rays of the dawn sun, Chinu experienced mixed and painful feelings. He suddenly remembered Yuli saying something about rebirth. Chinu watched Aunt Yuli go into the distance, but it was as if he saw a ghostly squad that accompanied her, the same squad that died then, during the Great Invasion, and suddenly he realized that all this time he was simply missing his chance. Suddenly, an air car stopped nearby. Xiao Xiao was at the helm, obviously, and Yuna chose her to take Chinu out. The dog sister invites the guy to go with her. The guy is in no hurry to sit down. Instead he throws the horse amulet, the one that his aunt gave him, and asks Xiao Xiao to give it to Yuli, and he has some business waiting for him here. Xiao Xiao excitedly asks where Chinu is going. She urges him to immediately get into the car, but Chinu does not dignify her with detailed explanations. He just turns around and says, "I'm going to die." The dog sisters, who are also here in the car, are watching Chinu walk away. They already know him well enough to understand that he cannot be restrained or convinced, but the worm of excitement is gnawing at them. So this is what Chinu was talking about. He returns to Li Ku's tent. He, as if waiting for his return, is still sitting at the table. Seeing Chinu, he leans back in his chair and asks the guy if he agrees to help them. Chinu nods in agreement, and Li Ku asks why the guy decided this. Because the chances of winning are mortally small. Chinu just shrugs, saying, "Who knows?" Casting a thoughtful glance outside at the sun, Chinu replies that maybe this beautiful sunrise is to blame for everything. Li Ku is discouraged. For some reason he was sure that it was sunset. Whether it's dawn or sunset, in any case, Li Ku is very happy that Chinu agreed to help them implement their plan. He gives the guy instructions. Putting his hands on Chinu's shoulders in a fatherly manner, Li Ku informs him that since Chinu is willing to help, they will change the plan a little. Chinu listens carefully and wonders what this plan is. Li Ku hands Chinu two objects, a knife and a ball, and explains that these are extremely useful things that will help him out at the right moment. The ball teleports up to 10 kilometers, but it takes 3 seconds to activate, and the knife, it accumulates energy for attack and will be useful in battle. And so, Li Ku continues, he hands Chinu some cunning device. The military man explains that he should also not forget about protection, but Chinu is already tired of the long preparations. He yawns from boredom and thinks, what's the point in this, if the chances of success are hardly more than half? Well, at this point the preparations seem completed, Li Ku says with a satisfied look, which gives Chinu 1 day to confirm the location, and then he and the military will attack. If there is no news from you in a day, Li Ku continues, then the military themselves will begin to break through from the enemy's weak positions. The passage must be destroyed at any cost, the commander concludes. Li Ku notices that Chinu looks a little confused and decides to boost the guy's morale. He says that the success or failure of this operation depends only on Chinu. He must do it. The young demon replies that he understands everything, but asks how he won't get lost there. There is one way, Li Ku answers. The general himself looks suspicious at this moment. He seems to be flexing his fists for a fight. What is he up to? Swinging. Li Ku clearly intends to hit Chinu, but the guy is quicker and strikes first. The sounds of a fight and fuss reach the guards, and they decide to intervene and check what's going on. It seems that now Chinu has only the dungeon to shine on. The guards take him to a huge and dark room, literally stuffed with cells. Apparently, they contain the same violators of public order as Chinu. Li Ku personally pushes Chinu one of these cages. He is terribly angry as soon as this youth dared to attack him. Chinu doesn't resist and allows himself to be taken to the cage, thinking to himself what a strange way Li Ku is doing things. That's all. The doors of the cage are tightly closed, and the cage itself is guarded by a military man. Li Ku orders him to follow Chinu for his sake. The military man accepts the order, and with that Li Ku leaves. Chinu is definitely not alone in the cage. He won't be bored from loneliness. The cell is filled to the brim with monsters of all kinds, who are there. Oddly enough, the monsters enthusiastically welcome the new guy in the cell. They are curious about what Chinu has done. Chinu replies that he only did what he had to do, but he was unlucky. Li Ku caught him, and Chinu had to somehow get out. That's why he is here. The prisoners of the cage look at Chinu with hope. Maybe, since he is so cool, he has the key. Chinu throws up his hands. Of course, he doesn't have the key. the monsters are very disappointed. One even allows himself to notice that, in this case, Chinu is just a buffoon. Suddenly, the attention of the guards guarding the cage is distracted by some noise in the other direction. The captain commands everyone to go there, and this is the very moment that Chinu has been waiting for. Cunningly and with anticipation, Chinu looks at the prison bars. He waits until the guards are completely out of sight. Saying that he doesn't need the key, Chinu approaches the bars and easily, as if they were silk curtains, pushes the steel bars aside. The opening is large enough for Chinu to slip through. The monsters who watched this spectacle seem to be ready to take back their words about the balabal. They do not understand how this guy could bend steel bars with his bare hands that could withstand a blow from a fourth-generation monster. Chinu is the first to get out of the cage, turns around and calls the rest of the monsters. Don't they really want to join him? After some hesitation they agree. Having passed the guards and found himself free, Chinu, accompanied by monsters, walks through the streets. They are unusually deserted, and the guy wonders where everyone has gone. One of the monsters guesses that perhaps the military discovered the location of their army and, in this case, probably went there, which explains the empty streets of the city. Chinu is surprised how the monster is so aware of the situation. He replies that they were sent to the front lines on a reconnaissance mission, which means they know more than others. The monster calls to immediately inform management. Chinu agrees that the monster is right and he needs to go immediately. He thinks to himself that his plan worked, but what the cunning demon's plan was, one can only guess. Night falls. In a clearing flooded with moonlight there is a tent number A. Two demons are located in the tent. Karen, the demon of desires, is sitting at the table. Her subordinate Pero reports to her the situation. According to him, some important information was received. On the table in front of Karen there is literally a dossier on Chinu. It is clear that the demons know his abilities. There is also a warning that the traitor Chinu needs to beware, but Karen still orders him to be let in. Chinu enters the tent as if for interrogation. He stands right in front of Karen's table, and she begins to interrogate him. The first thing she is interested in is his name. Without blinking an eye, Chinu calmly reveals that his name is Dewey. "What is your strength?" Karen asks. Chinu replies that it is in the process of growing, but Karen wants to know the exact numbers. At this moment, Chinu's gaze wandered over the gorgeous demoness, and apparently he was thinking about completely different numbers, because the next second he blurted out C, then corrected himself, saying, D. Karen does not seem to appreciate such close attention to her chest. She comes close to Chinu and hisses right in his face that she was actually asking about him. 18, the guy answers. Karen stands at this time with her hands on her hips, looking expectantly and demandingly at Chinu. Obviously, the guy again misunderstood the question and said not years, but centimeters. Karen furiously repeats that she was asking, in fact, about age, and looks closely at Chinu. The guy throws up his hands and ingenuously answers that he is really only 18. Karen looks at Chinu incredulously and gloomily remarks that she is sure that he is definitely hiding something. The gaze of her golden eyes is intent and attentive. Chinu scratches the back of his head with an absent-minded look and asks why they think so. He feigns innocence itself, but the very next second he literally crawls out of the tent like a bullet. Obviously someone's well-aimed kick threw him out. The guy flies a good 100 meters from the blow. He is furious. He hasn't been treated so unceremoniously for a long time. Karen's subordinate laments in his tent about how he could be such an idiot. He should have dealt with the boy earlier, as soon as he saw him. After all, from the very beginning he felt this feeling from the touch. He immediately realized that something was wrong, and his instinct almost never fails him. Chinu is not surprised by such a friendly and warm welcome. He has constantly heard this addressed to him before. Demon Feather comes out of the tent and is clearly determined to deal with Chinu properly. His sword is already ready and glowing with a devilish purple light. Chinu sees this and remarks that he wanted to be honest. But it's too late. He finishes his thought and attacks the demon, who tries to block the guy's blow with his sword. The demon swings and seems to intend to cut Chinu into small pieces, but he blocks his blow with only his bare hands. Karen watches the fight and notices that Chinu's speed is not inferior to that of the fallen Night Feather, who is known for his strength on the battlefield. When Chinu makes another well-aimed dash, Karen comes to the conclusion that Chinu may be even stronger. Chinu realizes that this time he did not encounter the strongest opponent, there have been worse ones, and defeating this fighter will be as easy as shelling pears. Chinu's fists burn with devilish red flames as he delivers crushing blows, one after another. Finally, the enemy is defeated. With a jubilant cry, Chinu jumps up and triumphantly waves his fist, celebrating the victory. Suddenly, Chinu's fist is entwined like a vine with something black, flexible and incredibly strong. It is Karen who stops Chinu with her bonds. She tells him that he has successfully passed the selection. With her hands folded across her chest, Karen looks at Chinu expectantly, her black bonds still holding Chinu's fists. She introduces herself. Her name is Commander Colin, and she calls on Chinu to follow her. They are surrounded by an entire armed retinue. Commander Cullen moves forward, she waits for Chinu to follow her, she looks back at the guy who is trailing behind. The commander accompanies Chinu to the tent, sits down at the table and asks the guy not to hold a grudge against her, because she has heard rumors that a traitor, a devil named Chinu, is fighting on the side of the enemy, the same one who managed to behead a 6th-level bone monster. The leader of the demons adds that she knows that the traitor has luxurious demonic armor and the ability to regenerate, so she is forced to check everyone who comes to them personally.